Good morning, everybody. Just a sound check for you guys joining the session. Thank you for joining. Good morning. Good morning. You're welcome to greet each other.
Good morning.
Just admitting
Good
all
morning, everybody.
people.
Good morning, everybody.
You're welcome to use the chat room also to do some networking, greet each other. Most welcome. Stanley, the link for the live streaming is on the Transport Forum's homepage, transportseek.com. The link is there. We're still admitting lots of people into the session. So we will be with you in about 4 minutes' time.
As all metal workers to build up when Ukrainian forces opened fire on an ambulance in the northeastern city. Russia also accuses Ukraine of using people as shields.
Morning to everybody that's joined in the meantime. Just a sound check. You can check your audio is working, check the volume and so on. We will be with you in about 1 minute's time. We're just admitting more colleagues to the session. Well, good morning to everybody. Good seeing all the faces again. We've been looking forward for quite some time to this excellent event, proudly hosted by Ability and Inve. And we're going to have lots of fun today, lots of learned presenters, and we're going to learn again once again at this Transfer Forum event today. Let's do some housekeeping while we're still admitting some people into the session. Obviously, a lot of people will still join in over the next few minutes. Remember, guys, to keep yourselves on mute, please. We're doing this in a meeting fashion, not a webinar fashion. In other words, people can unmute and so on because we'd like to give people opportunity to talk to us, but that can only be done in a well-organized fashion. We will do that during the questions and answers sessions of this event. So we're not going to encourage questions during the presentations. We will have, at the end of each half of the session today, we'll have a questions and answers opportunity where you'll be able to unmute and get recognized, and then you can ask a question. Obviously, you can also have a look at the chat room at the bottom of your screen. You can use the chat room to ask questions there to the panelists. The panelists kindly also sometimes answer those questions even before we get to the questions and answer session. But if that's not the case, during the questions and answers, we will scan the chat room and see whether there are questions that panelists can address. The people following on YouTube, you're welcome to text questions to the panelists on YouTube text function as well. Ladies and gents, you're also welcome to use the participants box at the bottom of your screen. You will see this participants box will enable you to see the other people on this event, and you can also mouse over your own name if you want to rename yourself. Sometimes it's a device name showing, so if you want to rename yourself, you can mouse over your own name and do a rename. So I think we are getting used to these virtual platforms nowadays, so it's usually going very well. And so the only thing I can ask you now is please keep yourselves on mute as much as possible. If not, I will mute you and to have an orderly fashion here. But thank you. Let me share my screen and so that we can see, how our program is going to look today. So today it's the 24th of March 2022. We're talking risk and insurance challenges in the transport sector, proudly hosted by Ability and Inve Risk Services, and with our platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum, C-Track. So, ladies and gents, the program today, I'm not going to sit and read through the entire program. You guys have seen the program, so as we go along, I will introduce the speakers to you, and then we can take it from there. So, as you can see, there's the first half of our program, and that is the second half of the program. And each half, you can see there's a questions and answers during which you'll be allowed to do questions and get recognized to answer. Now, ladies and gents, all these events, obviously, and we're still in the birthday month of the Transport Forum. We're 15 years old today in the current fashion. The Transport is actually a little bit older than 15 years, but in the current fashion, or the current format, it is 15 years old. In this birthday month, we realize once again that the Transport Forum all these years been made available to everybody, completely complimentary. And obviously, we must have valued sponsors and associates making this possible. Now, obviously, that's both financially and mentoring myself. As you can see today, Ability and Invest been instrumental actually to put together this program for us today. So we very much appreciation to all these organizations. And we're going to give quickly recognition to all the associates and the sponsoring bodies for the good work they are doing. And we're going to do it with a little bit of fun. You might have seen in the program, if I go to the first page, you can see the housekeeping and prize winning. So we're going to do prize winning, and that's a little bit fun we're going to have. So we're going to introduce the sponsors to you. And then at the end of that, we're going to do 2 prizes. And it's 2 of these USB desk fans, very nice desk fans. You can see it's also Transport Forum branded these. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the sponsors. So I'll put the slide on the screen, and first I will give that organization opportunity to say a few words about the organization. Many a times they prefer me doing it. So then obviously should nobody from that organization do it, I will do it. Say a few words about that organization, move to the next slide, and that's we'll go through it. And then at the end of that, I'm going to ask 2 questions about our sponsors. All right. And the first one, answering the question correct, will be the winner of the prize in the chat room. We're going to do it in the chat room. So you have to type your answer in the chat room. All right. So you have to concentrate now. And try and remember what we're saying about these sponsors to be able to answer the questions, and you can be the winner. And we're going to courier the prize to you. Unfortunately, you can only do this now with South Africans. And if you are an employee of the said organization, obviously, then kindly do not answer the question. But all right, so here we go. So the Transport Forum has got formal professional bodies in association with the Transport Forum. Obviously, there are many other also involved, but on a formal basis, we've got these organizations, and I'm going to quickly show each one of them to you. So we've got the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, established in 1921. It's a national association with members throughout the Republic of South Africa. All right, is accepted by the authorities as the leading industry voice and consultant by them on matters influencing freight management, so the freight forwarding industry. And obviously, ladies and gents, again, that space you need to become a member of SAF so that they can represent you and monitor you and guide you. The South African Express Parcel Association is a representative body and voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa. You can see they comprise of member companies engaged in express freight and courier industry. Thank you very much, SAPA, for your alliance. You've got the South African Bus Operators Association. So they represent the bus and coach industry, played a vital role in the social and economic development of our country. Formed in 1980, you can see, by 5 leading bus companies at the time. Today, Sabah represents about 70% of the public bus and coach fleet. So, South African Bus Operators Association. Next one is the African Rail Industry Association, or known as RIA. So, they are the permanent body in South Africa representing players in the railway industry. And the vision is to have a world-class rail infrastructure across South Africa, and the mission is to advocate for the rail industry and third-party access to the country's railway network. Also, the Transport Forum event on the 7th of April, we're going to talk about South Africa's rail network and the challenges we have currently, and Ria is also going to do a presentation that day. So that's going to be very interesting. Thank you, Ria. Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Remember, of these organizations, you're welcome to interrupt me should you want to say a few words about the organization. Catherine Larkin is very much involved here, leading international professional body for everybody who works within supply chain, logistics, and transport. Thank you very much for your support. And then we've got media alliances, obviously many media alliances with the Transport Forum, but these are a formal alliance with the Transport Forum. We've got Freight News by FTW. Let's have a look at Freight News. As we go along, I'm admitting more people to the session. So Freight News is for import-export decision makers. Established, innovative, effective. It's founded in 1953 by John Marsh, and you can see it's very much run up to the third generation by Anton. And that's all about freight and logistics news. You should be subscribe to these magazines. We've got Railways Africa magazines, African Continent Special Trade, Technical Business to Business online publication, covering all aspects of the rail sector. So definitely all about rail infrastructure, ladies and gents. And Creamer Media's Engineering News, real economy news, real time, premier source of real economy news, daily coverage of South Africa's transport and automotive sectors, accurate and timely news reportage. And they usually make us a video available of highlights of the week. So let me see if I can share that screen with you.
Hello and welcome to the roundup of this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 25 March 2022. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly senior online writer Tasneem Bulbulia writes that offers to housing conversions hold some potential, but that conditions apply. As South Africa looks to recover from the impacts of COVID-19, the viability of the trend of converting office buildings into residential properties is under scrutiny, with local and international interest having seemingly been piqued. The Engineering News features focus on energy transition, where project management skills are vital for local energy transition. Pumps, where submersible dewatering pumps are being tested on a grey water system. And drones, where advanced technology proves to be an effective solution for inspection projects. The Mining Weekly features focus on drilling and tunneling, where a drilling contractor plans to evolve its grouting services. And mine site accommodation, where a company secures a 3-year agreement with an iron ore miners village. This week's business leader is Tim Bissemans, Regional Director of Sarens. And as this week's cartoon shows, after a relatively long hibernation, the inflation monster is awake and ready to eat the income and wealth of all citizens, poor and rich alike. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly, the magazine that offers you news about developments in the real economy. Happy reading and see you next time.
Thank you, Engineering News, for such an exciting wrap of the week. Really appreciate your alliance. So, ladies and gents, let's now start with our sponsors, and our platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum, actually been involved with the Transport Forum since the inception of the Transport Forum 15 years ago, actually more than 15 years ago, is Ctrack. It's a leading global software as a service and a big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. You can see the operations span 6 continents and over 55 countries. Over 30 years experience have been keeping mobile assets of consumers, small and mid-sized businesses and large enterprises always visible, resulting in vehicle security, safer driving, and more efficient fleet operations. They say they're committed to their vision of being an innovative global solution provider simply connecting people with information. So important in the days we live in today to be visible and your assets being visible. Thank you very much, C-Track, for your brilliant support. Then we've got Global Trade Solution, founded in South Africa in 1999, delivers innovative technology and consulting services to the international trade and supply chain community, user-friendly cloud-based international trade and supply chain solution that incorporates the core requirements to manage all activities around the national supply chain. So it's in seamless integration of various entities in international sample supply chain. And they say they offer customers connect and consulting services. Thank you, Global Trade Solution. So here's a gold sponsor called Ticket Pro Travel. I'm going to take you through to their slide. You can see it's all about actually a corporate travel booking tool. So ticketprotravel.co.za is an online corporate travel booking tool with everything you need and nothing that you don't want. So they say there's no contracts, no hidden fees, just good business with straightforward fair pricing. A very convenient platform for all your Ticket Pro Travel corporate booking solution. Thank you, Ticket Pro Travel. So they got as well the Smart Tab solution, automatic fare collection solutions. And they talk about the Smart Tab system includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger payments methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system, inspection tools, and comprehensive MIS reports. So the Smart Tab solution includes a full back-end management system as well as on-bus electronic ticketing machine. Thank you very much, Smart Tab. I don't know if there's somebody from Ticket Pro want to say a few words, perhaps. JC Auditors. Oliver, maybe you want to say a few words about JC Auditors.
Yes, thanks, Harry. If I could share our little profile and
Yes,
just talk through it. Thanks. I think you'll have to allow me to share. Okay, there we go. Yeah, thanks again, Harry. I hope you can see the screen now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think we're talking about risk and the challenges around risk in insurance. And I think the space that JC Auditors does play in is exactly what would help companies to mitigate the risks in their business. And I'm sure Steve from Indra will chat later on about loss ratios and all of that. And I'm sorry, but I don't know why the slide isn't changing.
Try down arrow.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, so we in terms of our audit, we cover all 9 provinces in the country and a few SADC countries as well. And all of our certifications are recognized internationally. And all of our, we've got, our goal is actually to develop relationships with clients and to actually enable clients to put in systems that would mitigate their risks in the various areas. Road transport is one, but also we get other risks. And RTMS, of course, many of you would know, has achieved significant benefits in the country. So we offer that audit service. We also offer the various ISO standards, ISO 9001, which looks at minimizing risks around client delivery. ISO 14000 looks at minimizing risk around environmental performance. ISO 45000 around occupational health and safety risk. 22000 is food safety. 39 is obviously related directly to road traffic safety. So we are an IAF recognized body, which means certificates that we do issue are recognized internationally. And we have various training courses, health and safety, and other specialist services that we render. And we've got quite a number of clients that we're very fortunate to work with in terms of helping them implement systems that would promote safety, sustainability, and in the context of today's sessions, mitigate and minimize their risk. Yeah, and that's our contact details. Thank you very much, Harry.
Thank you, Oliver. Just keep that on for a few seconds. Thank you, Oliver. Really appreciate JC all of the support, and really appreciate all the mentorship you guys are giving myself. So let me just get this other screen back on again. Right, ladies and gents, then we've got University of Johannesburg with Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management. They've been with the Transport Forum since inception, Prof. Jackie Walters and later Prof. Nalin Pisa. They are in the School of Management within the College of Business and Economics at the University of Johannesburg since 1968. So Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management has developed programs that allow learners from diverse educational backgrounds to specialize in logistics management, transport management, and transport economics. Today, there's a large academic department offering a rich portfolio of well-articulated diplomas, undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, limited contact and online continuing education programs, and specialized industry target programs. So you can see what they're saying. Our excellent qualification provides key skills and facilitate career development in an important industry. So yeah, so thank you very much for the support and mentorship. I really appreciate that. So here we've got this guy. I don't know if Greta's online to say a few words.
Good morning, Harry. Yes, I'm here.
Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to all the participants. This week we'd like to highlight our transport and logistics certificate and diploma. We have worked really hard at producing some online education, and as you all know, online education is becoming the new norm. So our certificate and diploma is endorsed by CILT, which is a real feather in our cap, and we're very proud to announce that. But these qualifications are aimed at transport practitioners and provides foundational learning at level 4 and level 5 in the transport and logistics environment. So thanks very much. If you want to get hold of us, there's our contact information. We'd love to have a chat with you about how we can assist your team.
Thank you so much, Greta. Thank you for your support. Ladies and gents, take a picture of the screen quickly. If you want to contact them, you got the number. Obviously, the links to all the sponsors are available on the Transport Forum website as well. If you visit transportseek.com, I'll give you that website just now. All right, let's go. Thank you very much. We've got Betty Cargo, also a gold sponsor for a number of years now. They say they're the leading cargo airline, providing express airport-to-airport solutions and related services to the courier and express logistics industry. Thank you very much, Betty Cargo. Zutari, somebody from Zutari want to say a few words, perhaps? Zutari Consulting Engineers.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether anybody else from Zutari is online. I'm from Zutari. I'm sitting in the Polokwane office. So maybe I can just say, I think Zutari is maybe unknown to a lot of people. Maybe they grew aware of the Oricon brand. We've demerged again with our international partners, and we then became Zutari, which is now proudly South African and African. So we're having about 32 offices in Africa and the Middle East. And yeah, we were represented in all 9 provinces. So that is just to explain it's the old Oricon, or the original Africon, who then became Oricon, but we've demerged internationally, and we're back to Zutari now locally.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you for saying a few words. Yeah, Zutari has been part of the Transport Forum, I think, already for about 8 years. Consulting engineers of notes, ladies and gents, you need to contact them should you have any needs in this space. Thank you very much, Zutari. Ability. So Ability is one of our co-hosts. As we told you today, we've got two hosts, Ability and Indwe. Ability, I don't know, Yolanda, if you guys want to say a few words now about Ability.
Yes, thank you, Harry. Good morning, everybody. Ability is a short-term insurance underwriting agent that offers niche insurance solutions to a diverse range of unique businesses in South Africa. And these insurance solutions include cover for excess payments, buses and coaches, and commercial businesses. And we act on behalf of Mutual and Federal Risk Financing Limited, part of Old Mutual. And Ability also designs, underwrites, and issues these policies and handles claims and auxiliary administration functions. Our competitive advantage lies in our ability to create new ways of providing our business partners with extraordinary solutions that our inner circle of selected brokers all over the country can in turn can use to support their clients to mitigate and manage their exposure to risks involved in doing business in South Africa today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for your kind support. We really appreciate that and hosting us today. And looking forward to your presentation later on, Yolanda. Thank you very much. Yes, our other co-host today, ladies and gents, Indwe Risk Services. Steve, I don't know if you want to say a few words yourself.
I think, Harry, we're going to have enough to say as this webinar goes on. We are proud to be part of the Transport Forum and enjoy all the networking and interaction that takes place on these forums, and look forward to this one.
Indeed, Steve, thank you very much. I would like to know that Indwe is also the insurance partner for both the South African Bus Operators Association and the Road Freight Association. So Indwe, quite important work you guys are doing. Thank you very much. Unitrans Supply Chain Solutions, somebody from Unitrans perhaps. They talk about innovation, expertise delivered. It's a leading provider of integrated transportation, warehousing, and supply chain-based services to customers with a variety of needs, offering bespoke value propositions in each segment. Unitrans Supply Chain Solutions. Thank you very much, Unitrans, for your gold sponsorship. Standard Bank, over 158 years of experience. They believe that dreams matter and that together we can make them a reality. Operates in more than 20 countries in Africa and abroad. Our worldwide presence consists of an integrated suite end-to-end wealth management services and banking solutions. Kathy Bell from Standard Bank has been involved with the transport forum for many years, also from a road transport management system perspective. Thank you very much, Standard Bank, for your gold sponsorship. Cuba, somebody from Cuba to say a few words, perhaps.
Thank you, Harry. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Isaac.
Thank you. Cuba, we have been in the industry for over 30 years. We're part of the ICM Mobility Group, and we offer integrated solutions to public transit agencies and operators across the globe. And we do have offices here in South Africa and also in France and Italy. And we've got a number of projects which we have delivered in the BRT and the traditional bus operators. And we're always happy to be part of the Transport Forum. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Isaac. Really appreciate Cuba's support. I've also been part of the Transport Forum for quite a number of years as gold sponsor. Thank you very much. Easy Clear. Somebody from Easy Clear, perhaps. Software solutions for customs clearing, freight forwarding, and logistics providers covering air, sea, road, and rail. So it's a leading software provider for the customs and clearing industry. Thank you very much, Easy Clear. Huawei, smarter transportation in a smarter world. So, ladies and gents, all about intelligent transport systems. They're promoting the increased use of ICT, so information and communication technology in the transportation industry, helps to optimize transportation services, making travel more convenient, safe, and more efficient. So definitely not only selling cell phones, if you have that impression. So really a leading new ICT building smart urban rail, very much involved in the ICT industry. Thank you very much, Wally, for your gold sponsorship. We've got Bunyi Capital specializing in the bespoke taxi industry. So they see themselves as a public transport knowledge hub, integrated public transport network advisory, and they provide public transport thought leadership. Lots of experiences, especially in the taxi industry. So you're welcome to contact them. As I said, all the links are available on the Transform website. So they are our sponsors and our alliances. So let's give them a big hand for making the Transfer Forum possible. And we really appreciate your support. And we're looking forward to spending more and more years and months with you guys and adding lots of value to the transport sector in Southern Africa. Ladies and gents, now let's get back to, let me quickly share with you the business directory. I almost forgot about this one. Business directory is very popular. It's well categorized, and you can contact Olga Mashilo. It's been outsourced as a BE initiative to Olga Mashilo's company, Bolem Bontle. There's our number. You're welcome to contact her. Take a picture of the screen and get your company listed in this popular business directory. It's only 450 rands per year, so it's not money. And we hear that the people are getting lots of leads from this business directory. Very popular. So that's the website. You'll see the presentations uploaded to the website, and obviously all the presentations of the past 15 years have been uploaded to that website, transportseek.com. I'll just quickly share with you, if you want to download the presentations, you need to go and log in. You'll see to the left of your screen when you're on that website, you type in your username and password. It is, if you not have an account yet, then you can create your own complimentary account by selecting sign up under that under the user menu. Once you've done that, you can log in, and then you can go to events, to downloads, and that will give you the search engine, simple but powerful. So the top field there, you can type in a name or a topic or anything descriptive that you want to search. You need search, and you'll search through more than 900 presentations, giving you lots of information. Or you can go to category and you can select the date of the event, and it'll bring up the presentation of that day. Obviously, of the presentations that we've been made available. It's not always the case. Not all the presentations are in the public domain, but the majority of them have been made available. And today's presentation will be uploaded this afternoon to this website as well. All right, so now we're back to the fun part. We're going to do the competition now, and you will have opportunity to win a prize should you answer the question right before the other people, the first one. So I'm going to take you back to the screen of our sponsors. Here we go. I'm going to ask you two questions. So in other words, can be two winners, all right? And what you need to do now is you need to go to the chat room, and you're going to answer your question in the chat room. And the first person that answers the question correct is the winner. Again, it's only for South Africans, and obviously, if you won the first prize, then you can't answer the second prize. It's only one prize per person. And yeah, so I'm going to ask you the first question now. Let's see who's the winner. This one question has got two answers. I'm going to ask you, who are the hosting organizations of this event today? There are two organizations hosting us today. Who are they? Wine the Brain. It seems to me you've won. Thank you very much, Wine the Brain. All right, so let's. Congratulations, Wine. We will then send your prize to you. All right. Then the second one is a little bit more tricky. There's a sponsoring company on the Transport Forum, and they say they've got an online corporate travel booking system. Can you remember what that was? There we go. Leon Westhuizen, congratulations. You're right. So number 2 is Leon Westhuizen. That was sharp, Leon. Good. Congratulations to our 2 winners. You will receive your prize in soon. We will courier it the next week to all of you, and we really appreciate your participation. Right, ladies and gents, now we're back at our program, and we're going to kick off with today's exciting event. And I would love to hand you over now to our host to do the formal welcome. Yolanda Penikax is the Chief Executive Officer of Ability and Underwriting Managers. Thank you very much, Yolanda.
Good morning, everybody. Ability Underwriters and Inway Risk Services is honored today to host this event. And Harry, thank you so much for the Transport Forum and making this platform available to us. The introduction today is short and sweet. Together with the Transport Forum and the sponsors, we pay our sincere thanks to everyone that has made the time to attend this event. And also a big thank you to all our speakers today who are experts in their field, very active and involved in the risk and insurance space. And we know they've got lots of knowledgeable information that they will present today that will be valuable to your businesses. And with no further ado, Harry, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Exciting having you guys on board. And thank you very much for your kind introduction. We're looking forward to spending this day with you guys. So, ladies and gents, then, our first presenter then for today will be Mr. Stein McDowell. He's the Executive Director, Business and Specialist Insurance of Inway Risk Services. He's going to talk about understanding the new Sasria landscape. Thank you very much, Stein. I understand I must share your slides on your behalf, so I'm going to do my best to share it for you.
Harry, thank you so very much for sharing on my behalf. It's a great privilege for me to be here today, and good morning to everyone on our forum. Harry, also thank you for allowing me to go first. I've got quite a long journey ahead of me later today, so again, appreciation for that.
Thank you. I'll share in a moment.
That's fine. Thanks, Harry. Thank you, Harry. So let's stick on this slide just for a moment. We're speaking about Sasria, and Sasria has been in the news for the last year, quite a lot after what happened in KwaZulu-Natal, and I will speak about that a little later this morning in one of the slides. But first and foremost, and Oliver, thank you very much for what you said, when you referred to risk management and risk mitigation. It is imperatively important. Speak to your risk advisor is really what I want to speak to you about, more so than Sasria. Sasria is a topic which we could spend the whole day on, and I thought I was not going to turn this into any form of a training session. I think we passed that. But if we do require some training on Sasria, I'm sure between Harry and myself, we can get the requisite people to do a full training session, which, as always, can be very insightful. Before I move slides, when we talk about Sasria, we have to add maybe four other areas that I'd like us to think about very carefully. First and foremost is the pandemic that we've all come through. Hindsight is the best, and we've learned a lot, but we don't know at this point in time whether we'll be hit with any form of pandemic going forward that has the same effect that it had in terms of our global logistics and local logistics capabilities. Then we also have to think about things like the riots that took place, and that took place while we were still under certain lockdown regimes, and also at the same time massive cyber attacks which are taking place. We've just heard about the one at RTC that's been in the news. But whilst we had our KwaZulu-Natal riots and whilst we were under the pandemic, the Durban or KwaZulu-Natal port was hit by a severe cyber attack. So look, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, it's not just one risk that we're facing, it's a multitude of risks impacting us at exactly the same time, which can cause devastation in our business. And now the fourth one. Let's just understand that in the Northern Hemisphere, there's a war. That war has a certain amount of severe impact on Africa. Yesterday, watching some Sky News, the British government is indicating that they are going to be faced, for the first time since the Second World War, they are predicting that their inflation number will go to 8%. This is unheard of. This is totally, totally unheard of. And we're going to have to think out of the box, left thread, as some of my colleagues say, in terms of some of the solutions we come up with in terms of managing these risks. So what is the impact on the supply chain? From a logistical point of view, let's stick there for a moment. And I'm not going to steal any thunder from my colleague Steve, who is going to unpack this in a lot of detail. The one thing I'd like to say is that, a lot of my colleague brokers from other broking houses are on the platform today, and thank you very much. If anyone does not have a broker and is not represented by a risk advisor, quite willing to assist from Steve and my point of view, if you want to ask anything around what we're speaking about today. The most important thing around the supply chain management aspect is planning. It is key, and I cannot emphasize enough how much needs to go into the planning phase and the risk assessment phase of any business. And it's not just the big logistics operators, it's the smaller operator. The smaller operator, as a matter of fact, as you will know, our margins are thin at this point in time. Impacting things like increased cost of fuel, increased costs of insurance, etc., impacts on that margin very heavily. And it really hurts our SME clients very, very much. Something I'd like us to think of when we do these risk assessments is ask your risk advisor to help you assess the risk around your customers and suppliers. Because a lot of our customers and suppliers were in KwaZulu-Natal when the riots took place. But the impact on our business and the business interruption took place up here in Gauteng, where maybe we were domiciled as a company. And that leads to something which is called business interruption non-damage. And just if I stick there for one moment, business interruption, the trigger for business interruption is a defined event under an insurance policy. So you need a material damage event to take place. Yes, if our company was domiciled in the Durban or Greater KwaZulu area and a riot took place outside the gate and damage was done to our premises, that's material damage. But where my premises is in the Johannesburg area and my supplier or customer was damaged in KwaZulu-Natal, that leads to a totally different debate, but can be economically devastating as a client. Harry, if you'd be so kind to move on to the first slide, please. So all I've done here, and I'm going to read it, is define what Sasria is. And this is cut and paste off their website. Sasria is a non-life insurance company. I think we will understand that. In this case, we're looking after property damage, business interruption, or loss of gross profit. That is something we normally take care of with a short-term insurance policy and not a life insurance policy. So Sasria provide coverage for damage that is caused by special risks. Okay, and those special risks are defined as politically motivated, malicious acts, riots, strikes, terrorism, and public disorders. Each one of those words, not only from a lexicon or a dictionary point of view, has a plethora of different meanings. But I promise you, and if any of my legal colleagues are on here, let loose the dogs of legal war on this. And I can promise you we'll be arguing for the next 6 years in terms of the definitions of each one of those words. Not only the lawyers, I can tell you now, Yolandi from Mobility will hear me out. Her and I have really debates about these, and sometimes they get quite strongly debated, because the insurer has a certain definition of these, and the broker, of course, has a certain definition. And it can lead to a lot of frustration. But again, speak to your broker, speak to your insurer to understand exactly what the meaning is in any one of those definitions. Thank you, Harry. Another cut and paste, and this I found quite important to speak to us because it's something which in the last sort of 6 to 8 months of my life I'm dealing with every single day. And that is towards the actual claims procedure when it comes to any one of these Caesarea type losses. As we said in the previous slide, what is a political risk? And again, when I have some folk coming out of an area where taxis are housed, jumping a fence and setting one of our vehicles alight, is that a Caesarea matter or not? And I'm not going to try and go into that right now. Each case, each matter has its own very special facts. And for us to try and unpack that here would be superfluous. But what I'd like to say is that I have a number of clients that are finding it very difficult to get their claims paid at this point in time, which is another thing that leads to our economic depression, because one of my vehicles aren't running, I don't get my claim paid, and as a client, I can only imagine how that must feel. So as the client's broker and risk advisor, it's my job to take this up with the agent insurer on behalf of Caesarea, because the broker places your Caesarea insurance policy or coupon via the agent insurer, and Yolandi, with all, if I may use you as an example, an agent insurer is liability. Okay, so that's our agent insurer, and they will themselves then interact with Caesarea to make sure that the cover is placed correctly. What does sometimes happen from time to time is that there's an argument as to whether the agent insurer and the agent insurer's insurance policy should react to the claim, or whether it is a Caesarea matter. And of course, what happens, and I'm going to show this graphically, is this happens. So one insurer points at the other insurer, but who's in the middle? The broker and the client. I took some time and I went and met with Caesarea in Cape Town, and we had a long debate about this. Caesarea are very much of the opinion that the agreements, the SLAs that Caesarea has with the agent insurer is very clear that the agent insurer should be the insurer that pays the claim and then escalates the matter to Caesarea in the form of an arbitration matter. This comes straight from Caesarea. So my advice to anyone who's battling at this point in time in getting a claim paid is to reach out and speak to the agent insurer so that this can be resolved as quickly as possible. Thank you, Harry, for the next slide, please. So what are we talking about today? Caesarea does cover us for our buildings and our properties, etc. But I'd like us to think today a little bit more specifically to supply chain management, and that is our motor and or heavy commercial vehicles and or buses types of insurance. So what do? Caesarea looks after vehicles that are exposed to everyday riots and protests, and we have a lot of those. Caesarea Motor Insurance will cover your sedans, your light delivery vehicles, heavy commercial vehicles, motor dealers, mobile plant buses, trailers in the event of losses or damage as a result, again, of a riot or a strike. Remember that riot and strike leads to definition issues when it comes to the agent insurer and Caesarea themselves. Goods in transit and or marine, because we're in logistics. This insurance covers goods which are in transit by any form of transportation anywhere in the Republic of South Africa or temporarily in Namibia for a period not exceeding 60 consecutive days. And we must remember that in Namibia, we have a sort of a parallel to Caesarea, which is called Nasria. You can go to the next slide for me. Thank you, Harry, very much. Let us just go back to, and it's, I must say, I'm not going to tell everyone that I want a birthday present, but I was celebrating with Steve my birthday last year on the 13th of July, when all of a sudden on the news, we started getting reports of what was happening down in KwaZulu-Natal. All right, so the total quantum of the combined claims is around 33.83 billion. Caveat that for a moment, so I'm going to speak a bit more about that. And Caesarea has so far managed to pay out around 17.19 billion. This news is slightly old, okay, that was for the 6 months, and it is higher at this point in time, so more claims have been paid. We know, and in speaking with the folk at Caesarea, that the property-related Caesarea claims are estimated to be around 35 billion. Okay, and now we've also got to take into consideration the impact of those companies that had business interruption cover in the form of what we call right wrap, and mostly right wrap is placed in the United Kingdom market. Why is that important? It will come up in the next slide. but that's another 30 billion. So the rights on insured losses, I'm not talking about uninsured losses, but only on insured losses, impacted South Africa with 65 billion rands worth of loss. Now, what's the impact of that? It's massive. One example, and one example alone, is that there are 3 multinational companies, doesn't matter who they are, that have decided to move their premises and their distribution networks out of the KwaZulu-Natal area, somewhere else into South Africa. That will cost in the region of 9,000 jobs. 9,000 jobs in South Africa impact for each job lost up to 100 other people. So we can just understand what devastation this has cost us. When I talk about risk mitigation and identifying our risk and evaluating that risk, be very aware that a number of websites out there that follow the trend of riots in South Africa are predicting that there will be another event. And I'm just leaving that with you. Harry, please, next slide. Okay, so what can an insurance company do when losses become extreme? All they can do is restrict the cover, and I'll give you another example in a moment, or they can increase the premium, which we're all feeling at the moment. I'll get to a proposal in a moment. So just by way, and I know all of you probably know this, so if you have a heavy commercial vehicle, your SASRIA rate will go up by 1,736%. Okay, that is astronomical. Industry as a whole, my other broking colleagues, ourselves, and FIA lobbied SASRIA when we heard that this was going to happen. But SASRIA had made up the mind already. The Prudential Authority had signed off on it, as had the FCA, the Financial Services of South Africa. It's signed off, it's done. What we did say was that the impact of that type of a price increase is like taking a bread at 15 rands a day up to 15,000 rand overnight. We'd starve, every single one of us. And so there's a tremendous amount of lobbying that is taking place at the moment for us to come up with different ways to finance this type of risk. Ladies and gentlemen, let us make it 100% clear here. Insurance is the most expensive form of financing that you can find in the world. And therefore, it is so important, identify your risk, evaluate that risk, look at the controls before you transfer it to an insurance market. Why do I say that? In that process, insurance comprises 15%, no more, of the protection of that risk process. So it is actually very, very small. And as Oliver rightly said from JC Auditors, the risk mitigation and evaluation process is far more important and critical to us as a business than just purely insuring our assets. Just on the restrict and cancel cover, be very aware when you speak to your risk advisors and your brokers, they're going to also tell you that other restrictions are coming into your cover, like restrictions around public utilities. What does that mean? Well, we all know that Eskom is a public utility provider in the form of electricity or power. And so lots of insurance policies, most of them, the 99% of them, will exclude losses emanating from that sort of trigger, being power. Telecommunications is the other one. And why? Because telecommunications is so reliant on power, etc., etc., etc. It has its own supply chain. So there are lots of things that are coming in now which are going to restrict our cover and increase our premium. Another restriction in the cover is that our colleagues at SASRIA had to go overseas to place what we call their reinsurance. Okay, so remember, they can carry a certain amount of risk themselves, but afterwards they need to reinsure, buy reinsurance from other insurers. And it is very unfortunate that our colleagues came back from the UK and have not been able to secure excess of loss cover anymore. And that has been communicated quite well. I'm sure you all know about it. It does mean, though, that we're going to have to go out and find other facilities to provide us with excess of loss. And it is also being quite clear that it is an extremely expensive type of cover to acquire overseas at this point in time, because of the amount of claims that are going to be and have been paid out due to the riots that took place in KwaZulu-Natal. Harry, please, if you could get on to the next one. Thanks. This is the final slide before we're on board. So what did the lobbying achieve for us? Okay, so all I did was I said, look, SASRIA have said we're going to apply some voluntary deductibles for you to help you, and we'll give you an applicable discount on your rate should you take that sort of deductible. Okay, so I look at that and I say, thank you very much. But I also say, let's be very wary. If we take some of these deductibles, it's still a massive increase in our rate online. If you've got a 1,700% rate online increase, we're still going to have an 800% overall increase if we take any of these deductibles. So the lobbying has to continue. And as an industry, we will not lie down. We are using these forums that we are speaking at today, the RFA forums, the SABO forums, our broking forums, the FIA forums, to lobby not only SASRIA, but National Treasury, as far as this is concerned, because we find it too onerous for our transporters to be bludgeoned with this type of increase overnight. The co-insurance option that they have put forward, I would just leave with you and leave you one final thought. Be very wary of the co-insurance solution. It works very well if you have an older fleet, but as soon as you finance new vehicles, be very aware that your financing institution, your bank, is going to ask you for your proof of insurance. And proof of insurance is not co-insurance. So it could be very dangerous for you to try and finance a vehicle on a co-insured option as opposed to a straight insured option. But I'll leave that with you, Harry, and with the rest of the team. Before I go, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I've asked Steve if he would honor us with answering any questions at the end, Harry, due to the fact that I have to leave. But, thanks very much again for allowing us to chat to everyone on the forum. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much, Steve. Stein, for the excellent presentation. I'm just leaving your contact details on the screen for a few seconds. Yeah, I'm sure that we're looking forward to them representing Steve at the questions and answer session. Thank you very much, Stein, and take care. Thanks so much. Right, ladies and gents, let's get our program up again. So our next presenter then will be Mr. Steve Cornelius. He's the automotive and transport specialist at Insurers Services, and he's going to talk about is your risk and insurance program working for you. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Harry. Let's see if we can get some of this technology working for me before I do anything. Are we winning?
Yes, just slide view. There we go.
Is that up?
It's up.
Okay, good. Harry, thanks for the introduction, and thank you to all the people sitting out there listening to us. I hope you'll find it incisive and find something to take back to your workplace with. And a special greeting to the friends and clients and colleagues that are out there. Just to begin with, I think never has the role of a broker been quite as important in the transport sector as what it is today. Economic, political, and social events have conspired to create what I consider almost a perfect storm for bus and truck operators. In the past, the margins were thin, as we all know. Taking recent events into account, these margins have just been further eroded. And the cause of this perfect storm, or let's put it this way, the elements of this perfect storm we can quickly list there. COVID, I don't think we need to spend any more time on COVID. And on that point, I hope none of you are wearing masks. It's just wonderful to be without a mask the whole time. Diesel prices are at an all-time high. I don't think we have to go any further about the impact that Sasria is having on our industry at the moment. Bus operators always had a very high premium for Sasria, and truck operators have now fallen foul, and as Stein mentioned, 1,000% increase in their premiums. There's violence and intimidation. In the bus industry, I'm aware of the very poor increases in subsidies, which is putting a strain on them. Interest rates are busy climbing. And finally, a weak rand. Although having said that, after making the or preparing this slide, I see our rand is recovering somewhat. So,
sorry to interrupt you, Steve.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Excuse me. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little dialog box. Something is sharing your screen. Stop sharing and hide. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Just select hide. Thank you.
Okay. I think what the consequence of all of this is that cost cutting is going to be paramount now in all businesses within our industry. And my fear is that risk and insurance expenses, being a grudge purchase, will be one of the first expenses to be scrutinized and come under the microscope. And the worst scenario being that clients start cancelling their insurances, which will have catastrophic impact or can have catastrophic impact on the transport itself. So I think it's the purpose of my presentation today will be to have a look at an integrated risk and insurance function that the broker needs to get involved with, which will have as a result, hopefully, the determination of an efficient and effective risk and insurance program. And I'm going to touch on a few elements. And certainly I don't have sufficient time to go into a huge amount of detail, but I've highlighted certainly the critical elements and some key focus areas, and I get on to alternative structuring of premium payments, and then finally I'll touch on a little bit of claims administration and some of the threats that go with claims. So let's get straight into it. The critical elements of a risk and insurance program, and I want to add integrated there. I'll keep on repeating integrated. Starts with the role of the broker. I think in the broker in the transport sector, it's a highly specialized area, and I think that role has changed quite dramatically. Transporters can't afford anymore just to throw money at insurance, and you heard Stein confirming that insurance is an extremely expensive method of funding a risk. I'll touch on the components of an insurance premium a little bit later. When I talk about integrated, it means that the broker now has to get far more involved, and risk mitigation needs to become part of the whole program. We can't shy away from it. If we agree that insurance is an expensive funding mechanism, then we have to look at mitigating circumstances, and that falls under risk management, which I'll also touch on a little bit later. Insurers, I believe, also need to be part of this whole integrated process. There seems to be a feeling that insurers stand apart from the whole issue, and I don't think that we can afford to have that anymore. I think the client, the broker, and the insurer now need to stand together and in each case develop the most effective solution that you can. And in order to do that, it obviously goes without saying that the broker has to make the time to understand the business the operator's business, and also the operator in terms of his appetite for risk, his balance sheet strength, his ability to handle his own risk internally. Those are all things that have to become be put on the table when structuring what we call the optimum program. So advice from the broker now needs to form a large part of this whole area. So let's go on and look at, and as I say, I've just highlighted a couple of key areas of focus when structuring a program. Okay, cover. Obviously, we can start there. Again, the whole purpose of this presentation is to find areas where we can save costs and take an expense, or to reduce an expense that the transporter's got. I believe it's important that the transporter needs to understand that you can't throw money at predictable, non-catastrophic events. Rather deal with those in an operational way. And an easy example of that is glass and windscreen claims. I mean, you know, we all know you're going to have that claim. It's not a question. It's not a claim that is going to destroy the business. It is a type of claim that you can actually do and negotiate supplier rates, etc., and service with directly. So that's just an example of where clients should really consider carefully what they're throwing insurance at, so as to bring down their premium. Indemnity, I think if we look at what the purpose of insurance and indemnity is, it's to put the client back in a position that he was prior to the incident. Now, because ours is a very specialized industry that we work in, that's not always as cut and dried as what it might appear, particularly in the bus industry, where a lot of the vehicles are custom built. Even in the trucking side, a lot of clients do look after their trucks better than what might be revealed in a Mead and McGrath or one of these publications that indicate retail values to us. So my suggestion to the transporters out there is have a very good look at your current basis of indemnity and sum insured, and look at rather adopting an agreed value. It's something that generally insurers won't automatically quote you on. They like to go the old traditional retail value, which means that you're never quite sure of what you're going to be paid out in the event of a full loss. So agreed value is an opportunity right up front to have a look at your vehicle, assess what its value is to you, what the current replacement value of that specific vehicle is, and then agree with the insurer a figure, which means that you know what you're going to get paid out. There's no arguing. And so I think that is an important, it seems to be a small issue, but I think it's a very important issue in the transport industry. You might end up paying a little bit more premium, but at the end of the day, that's going to make it worth it when you have a full loss. So agreed value is something that we've got to look at. Excess structures, a very sore point, I think, with the transporters out there. It always comes as a bit of a surprise when you have to suddenly fork out that excess. But again, if you're looking at an integrated process here, one's got to look at what level of self-insurance or self-payment can the transporter absorb so as to reduce his premium. So it's sort of the first step into this self-insurance world. I think it's important, and this is where the broker has to, it gets back to my original comment, the broker has to understand the business. If the client is of a size and of a nature that he can absorb a bit more, there are alternative excess structures to look at, and I mentioned the franchise excess as an example. So if the business is running well, the claims experience is good, and you have the ability to absorb a little bit more risk, a franchise excess allows you to take a first initial amount. Argument's sake, the first 50,000 Rand of every claim you absorb yourself. So you don't have a whole lot of small nitty-gritty claims going through on your policy. But once it exceeds that, then there's no excess. There's no issue with an excess. So I mention a franchise excess, make a note of it, and see if it might fit your business. Of course, recoveries and salvages is also, from a broker point of view, a sore point, because it's all about reducing your loss ratio. This word loss ratio, to the operators out there, I'm sure you all understand it well, but it's basically the percentage of claims divided by premium, and that has to remain under a certain level. Otherwise, the insurers do start getting itchy, and you find all sorts of things happening on your policy. So recoveries and salvages is something that's in the control of the insurer. The broker has an obligation to negotiate a process of recovery and salvage that is to the advantage of the client, which will bring down his loss ratios. Of course, nothing can happen without claims data. Everything in our game revolves around historical blow-by-blow claims information. And again, the broker has an obligation to analyze this data with a view to determining possible risk mitigation interventions, and also using that claims information to structure a better alternative structure for the client, if I can put it like that. So accurate claims data forms a very, very critical element in this whole process. And of course, risk management advice. We sometimes as brokers assume that the client knows more about risk management than we do. That's not always the case. Referring back to what Steyn said earlier, the small to medium-sized operator is where I believe our big role as brokers becomes even more important. So don't assume that the operator knows everything about risk management. As the broker, it's our job to be able to advise the client on risk management issues. And I'm not getting into a whole lot of detail here about what those issues are. That's a subject for a separate discussion altogether. So just to have a look very briefly, as I say, it's not comprehensive, but these are the focus areas for a broker to have a look at. How can we save the client premium? Okay, premium is really a function of claims, I guess, costs for the insurer, his profit, plus the commission that will be paid to the brokers. So the sum of those elements form the basic premium that the transporter, that you guys get charged. In an ideal world, I suppose we could imagine that calculation and that premium would be the same for all insurers for a specific client, but it never is like that, and there are various reasons for that. And in fact, that also leads to another role for a broker. There are insurers out there that have a stronger appetite for certain risks than others. So when finding the best solution for a client, one has to also find which insurer that solution fits best with. Okay, so we've got a premium, and that's been negotiated. What happens now is that premium can be handled in different ways, which allows the transporter to possibly share in successful efforts to run a better loss ratio. So again, please, guys out there, I know there's brokers out there that are technically much stronger than me. I'm addressing the transporter primarily here. This is not meant to be a detailed technical presentation. So the deposit premium arrangement is very popular with clients. Bigger clients, obviously, it fits better with clients that have a good solid claims ratio. And what a deposit premium allows is for the client to pay only, for example, 60% of his 100% premium. So there's an immediate cash flow benefit because you're only paying 60%. Of course, that's subject to maintaining a loss ratio within a predetermined threshold. And if the client is successful in that, at the end of the day, he saves 40% of his premium. That, in a nutshell, is what a deposit premium allows. They're generally structured on an annual basis. Premium funding is available very easily in the market. There are a number of insurers that do premium funding or financing. There's also a cash flow benefit in that the transporter can claim in the first month that the annual premium is paid, he can claim back the VAT on that full premium. So that allows a bit of cash flow benefit for the client as well. So a very popular way of structuring premium payment. A more normal arrangement that is, and I must say, you don't get deposit premium unless you ask for it. So the broker needs to be aware of these opportunities and needs to motivate them and request them. Funds, that really is a way where an insurer, it's almost like a deposit premium, but it works on a monthly basis where the insurer takes a portion of your premium, splits it into two areas, one claims payment and the other one a fund. And again, as long as your loss ratio stays under a predetermined level, at the end of the year, you get back whatever's left in that fund that hasn't been utilized to top up the premium, the claims premium, to that predetermined amount. So if you have an extremely good year, you get your whole fund back. If you have that doesn't mean that you can't get some of your fund back, depending on the way your claims have gone. Low claims rebates, again, a very simple way of incentivizing a client to look after his loss ratio, where he gets back a certain percentage of whatever he saves under that predetermined loss ratio. You notice I'm not using the word profit share. We're not allowed to use that, but we call it a low claims rebate. Then there are more sophisticated methods of structuring a client's affairs. Aggregate excesses, where you take a big step into self-insurance, and insurers only kick in after a certain level has been burned. This is generally for more larger clients with strong risk management processes, but it's something that the brokers must be aware of and be able to present to the transporter. I also mentioned contingency policies, which is a way of the transporter, the client, ring-fencing some of his exposures and having effectively his own little insurance company that allows him flexibility to write different risks into that and share in the underwriting profits of that policy. So that, guys, is a way of structuring premium, again aimed at bringing down overall cost of the client's risk and insurance program. Okay, let's have a look at what I said. We'd come back to risk management recognition or risk management issues. Again, the broker must be aware of what the client is doing in his business to mitigate his risks. So why? Because the insurer, if he doesn't know about it, cannot recognize it. So once these interventions are recognized by the broker and introduced to the insurer, you're in a position to ask the insurer to discount the premiums because of the effort that the client is actually making. And then I list a couple of very standard sort of risk management interventions which one could look for and recognize and highlight. And if they're not there, certainly think of suggesting to the client to bring them in because of the reduction in premium that is going to come with it. And certainly a lot of the risk revolves around the driver, as we all know. I think that is a shared knowledge that the driver is probably 80% of our risk. So driver behavior monitoring is a very important area in our lives. And I know we at Indware are working hard to try and develop a software system that will speak to any telematics unit out there and produce a very simple driver behavior report that we can use to help the client and the insurer in this whole integrated process. Oliver, you heard Oliver speak earlier about RTMS compliance stroke certification. I also happen to serve on the RTMS steering committee with Oliver, and am passionately in favor of what RTMS stands for and what it does for you. After many workshops, listening to successful RTMS certified clients tell their story, it's beyond any doubt of the ability for RTMS certification to bring down the cost of risk and insurance to that client for all various reasons. But again, no time for detail today. Look out for RTMS workshops going forward, and wherever possible, try and attend them. Maintenance programs, guys, just a funny story. Patrick O'Leary from Fleetwatch for many years has been running a tire and brake watch exercise, which very simply is an exercise with local authorities where they pull trucks off randomly and check their tires and brakes. And over the years, the percentage of non-compliance has hovered around about the 66% mark, which is a frightening statistic. Tire maintenance or roadworthiness is a terribly important element of insurance. And have a look and see if there is something that the client can do to make sure that he is maintaining at least just his tires and brakes. Driver training and wellness. A lot of clients have bought into this and they're seeing the benefit. As brokers, we must encourage it, we must recognize it, and the insurers must discount it. Driver incentive programs, always a good thing to incentivize drivers for driving well, particularly if you have driver behavior monitoring or formal driver behavior monitoring reports that allow you to run these incentive programs. And congratulations to Hollard for what they do with their driver recognition program every year. And of course, onboard cameras, inboard and inward and outward facing cameras are, it's an expensive but a very handy tool to do a lot of things, to check what's going on in the cab and to check what's going on outside the truck, and in the event of accidents, to assist with the reconstruction and the, finding out actually who is at fault. third-party recoveries and offences can be made a lot easier with footage from cameras. Right, guys. Finally, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about the claims side of this whole risk and insurance integrated structure. Claims obviously affect the client dramatically in a whole number of ways. The cost of the claim, the excess, the downtime. So very simply put, as brokers, we need to make sure that there are service levels in place to reduce the turnaround time and allow the vehicles to get back on the road earning money for their client as soon as possible. So again, this is where the insurer comes in. We need to have a very clear-cut agreement in place to mitigate downtime. Because particularly again with the smaller guys, the bigger fleets, they might have spare capacity. The small guys don't. So if you've got 5 trucks, one goes down, that's 20% of your income gone. That dreaded word, repudiations. I hate that word with a passion. But it's something that as a broker, it lives with you all the time, and it's your biggest fear. And generally, repudiations come as a result of a lack of compliance with policy terms and conditions. And I list just a couple of the more common reasons for repudiation and why. You might think, well, what has this got to do with saving money and etc.? But it might not save money, but it's going to save a loss of money. If a transporter has a major smash and that claim is repudiated for whatever reason, that can be catastrophic and lead to a lot of hardship. So rather be aware of the areas where insurers look for issues, and roadworthiness is obviously one of them. I mentioned the tires and brakes. Even if the certificate of fitness is there and the roadworthy certificates, all that nice thing and the vehicle's license, but the brakes or the tires are not maintained correctly, the insurer has every right to repudiate because of roadworthiness. Overloading both on buses and trucks. I dealt with an ombuds case recently, overloading on a bus that went over a cliff. Yes, it was a very sad issue. So I know some insurers do give a little bit of leeway with overloading. I would strongly suggest that the transporters out there don't take advantage of that, and make sure that your vehicle is within the Road Act parameters. Don't overload, because it can be used again to repudiate. Valid documentation, the nicest, easiest way to throw a claim out is to say that the driver didn't have a valid driver's license. And by valid, I mean it might look valid, but it's not, as we well know in this country, sadly. As brokers, we can only advise our clients, when you employ someone, go to the nth degree to ensure that the documentation is valid. Don't let PDP certificates expire, likewise with certificates of fitness, because these are all part of the terms and conditions of the underlying policy. Another repudiation can come through when there is no cover. For instance, physical security requirements. If they say you've got to have an operational GPS tracking device and the vehicle gets stolen and the device wasn't working, the cover is gone. Again, and also if in terms of no cover, I think an easy example is on the GIT side of insurances, where, for example, if you're carrying refrigerated goods, and the driver accidentally sets the temperature at the incorrect temperature, and the goods arrive at their destination and they've gone bad. Unless you as the broker have physically extended that policy with a incorrect temperature setting and deterioration of stock extension, there is no cover for that loss, which is going to put the client in a very bad situation. So be careful as brokers that the cover is there. And of course, premium payments, very simple. You can't get claims paid unless you've paid your premium. So make sure that if there's ever an issue with any of your payments, that arrangements are made with your broker and the insurer to extend cover until you fixed whatever the problems are, and have it in writing. Finally, incorrect information on the proposal. If you have misled the insurer in any way at the proposal stage, they can fall back on that misinformation and waive your benefits of that policy. So those are just a few of the main sort of general reasons for repudiation, and why you should be aware of them is not to get into that situation. Finally, recoveries and salvages, we touched on it earlier, a very important element to bring down your average cost of your claim. And as brokers, we've got to have the hard discussions with the insurers, because if you go back to the deposit premium payment arrangement, it can become quite twitchy at the end of the year when you start going over your threshold, which is now going to cost you 40% more in premium, or the balance of the 40% premium, and the insurer hasn't, in your opinion, done sufficient recoveries and salvages. It becomes a tough discussion, to put it mildly. So, in conclusion, gentlemen, that is the end of my story. I hope that the transporters that I'm speaking to out there would have found something in my presentation that they can take back to their businesses, that will bring down the severity and the frequency of their claims, which at the end of the day minimize premium payments, maximize sharing in loss ratios, minimize downtime, saving in your lost time, lost business, whatever you want to call it, maximize your recoveries and salvages, and avoid repudiations. That, in a nutshell, those elements is what will, if they are all under control, will result in you being able to say, I have an effective and efficient risk and insurance program. I think in the short space of time that I've had, I've tried to get through everything that is of importance. If there are questions out there of a specific nature, I don't think it's the right forum to take specific questions. I will show my contact details now. I would request that you send me an email with your questions. We are the insurance partner, as I said, for the Road Freight Association and SABOA. So our role is to help the transport industry. And Stein mentioned it earlier. We'll gladly, if your broker cannot answer the questions, or if you don't have a broker, please direct the questions to me directly. Again, I thank you for the time. Thank you for your attendance. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you so much, Steve. Sure, such important information you're sharing. Thank you very much. And I'm quite sure there will be questions. I see Dr. Shirley Loyce already made a comment there in the chat room. We will maybe use that as a little case study quickly. But thank you very much. We really appreciate Steve. Just get our program up here. So, ladies and gents, what we're going to do now is we're going to do questions and answers. So we've got Steve and Yolanda. I don't know if you want to join in. I know you're presenting after the break, but Yolanda, you're welcome to join in as well. If you guys perhaps could unmute and switch on your camera, then I would really appreciate that. And then the audience, welcome to now unmute yourself. I will then see when you've unmuted, and then you can ask your question when I recognize you. I see Dr. Shirley Lloyd, she's asking while we're waiting for people to make up their minds in terms of their questions. Shirley is saying that, there's very little help for clients or movers who have simply been ripped off by corrupt insurance, loss adjusters, and movers. Sad, but it's true. Yeah, I've been thinking while you guys presenting, but that's maybe more common than something else. Is that, can you be insured against corruption? Because that's a part of our laws today. So I don't know if you guys want to respond to Shirley's comment. People that's been ripped off by corrupt insurance, loss adjusters, and movers. I know Shirley had a bad experience moving to Cape Town recently. Shirley, I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about your experience. It's not necessary to mention names, but maybe you could share your experience.
Yes, thank you very much, Harry, and good morning to everybody. And I've enjoyed listening to the presentations. Yeah, we were just, we used a particular mover a few times. We had a very bad experience once, but 2 other good ones or 3 other good experiences. So we decided to use that mover again. Unfortunately, they had tied their little trailer containing most of the furniture with chains to the bumper of their main vehicle. And as they were coming into Cape Town, into Gordons Bay, that trailer came loose and the furniture was damaged. To cut a long story short, between the loss adjuster who sent photos of secondhand goods, we have never even seen those photos, to a person who isn't an assessor to get an assessment of what the secondhand furniture on an auction would be worth, etc., etc. We are sitting now finally going into a legal case against the mover who paid out of the 642 units that should have been delivered in good condition. Only 273 were delivered, but yet he's taken the whole fee of the insurer themselves, of the broker who was in between, and the loss adjuster, and all of them very rude. I come from an education background and have worked in the Department of Higher Education, where I dealt a lot with misrepresentation, misinformation, fraud, corruption, etc. And for me, the whole case has been left a sour taste, and that's why I have suggested that maybe the Transport Forum looks at setting a gold standard for all movers, for all brokers involved with movers of furniture, all goods in transit, for the common little person in the street like me, so that we are all protected along the way and not dragged into gross unpleasantries. And now we are taking the mover to court, and I am busy with the ombud, the insurance ombud, reporting the loss adjuster and the broker. And I'm busy with the consumer ombud as well. So I think that if there were a simple gold standard that everybody needs to comply with, as you have a professional body that has to comply with SACWA's requirements for recognition, I think that would go a long way to sorting out people like me with bad stories, and there are many of us. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for sharing, Shirley. Steve and Yolanda, don't you guys want to respond to that?
Yes, I am familiar with Shirley's issue, and I have spent some time discussing the matter with her and her husband. And generally, my suggestion in this particular instance would be the Road Freight Association. They are the controlling body for road freight, which includes, I think there's a subsidiary body, the Road Movers Association or something, which is affiliated to the Road Freight Association. But yeah, I agree with her comments. A gold standard would be great, but unfortunately, life is such that you will always get people that are non-compliant, and you've just got to protect yourself at all costs.
Lily, I would just like to contribute and say I'd like to genuinely sorry for your loss and the bad experience that you've had. There is the regulator, the FSCA is working, towards our legislation and regulation in the industry has been adapted over the past couple of years, and it's almost like a gold standard where there's fit and proper conditions, where customers need to be treated fairly, and it's most unfortunate that you've had a run in like this. But most professional brokers and most professional insurers have already, doing their best to uphold these standards. And I think you're doing the right thing, approaching the Ombud and taking action. And yes, if you need any assistance, then reach out to any of us. We will gladly have a conversation with you.
Yolandi. All right, any other questions to our panelists? Seems people are happy on the stage. Maybe Stephen, Yolandi, if you want to do some comments as closure for this first half of the session today, and then we'll take a break. So Steve, maybe some closing comments for this all.
Just again, a big thank you to those people who've taken the time and trouble to attend this. And I just think we're going into an incredibly difficult period, and it's time for us to partner with the insurers to become more open and transparent with insurers and with the client. Advice is paramount now. From a broker's point of view, we have to give the client the correct advice. So I hope I made that point clear in my presentation. And yes, good luck to everyone going forward. It's going to be a tough year. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Steve. Yolandi.
Yes, I think I just want to thank all the participants for attending. And I just wanted to say that risk management is going to play a huge role going forward. It is a powerful tool in your business, not only to save on your insurance premiums, but to save on your overall costs. So I think a 360-degree look at your business from all angles is very necessary at this stage to improve your resilience decrease your fragility. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Yolandi. The question now in the chat room, we will take in the next questions and answers. Guys, thank you very much for this far. We're going to now take a 15 minutes break, and then I'll see you back again. I'll put up the clock for us. Go and grab that cup of coffee, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gents, let's take up our seats again. We're going to start the second half of our event. I hope you had a nice cup of coffee. You're still busy drinking the last half of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our second half of the program. We're still talking risk and insurance challenges in the transport sector, proudly being hosted by Ability and Inway Risk Services. Thank you very much to our proud sponsors making this possible, and our hosts. So our first presenter now, this second half, is Ms. Yolandi van Niekerk. Again, she's the Chief Executive Officer of Ability Underwriting Managers. She's going to talk about how excess insurance cover can help transport businesses. Thank you very much, Yolandi.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, here we go. Today, I'm going to talk about how important it is to be excess conscious. Often, when we look at our insurance policies, in the moment we are so excited to go on cover that we forget to check the small print, and your excess is something that hides in the small print of your policy. As a South African transport operator or bus operator, we understand your financial goals to be to protect your profitability, to increase profit margins, reduce your business expenses, to keep a tight grip on the cost whilst maintaining your assets, create more certainty and stability for your organization, to eliminate as much risk as possible, to identify any risks that can have a detrimental impact on your business, to stay within your budget, to create more resiliency within your company to handle the unforeseen, and to direct the money in your business intelligently where it is most needed. So let's look at an excess, and we just recap what it is. Most of you know, but it's the first amount payable or the deductible in terms of your policy wording. We call this the uninsured portion of the claim that you are responsible for as a business owner. And if you have a loss that falls within this excess, your insurer will not pay this portion. And so why do insurers apply an excess? And it's simple: to eliminate small losses, because it leads to high administration costs. And if you do not have any other reasons, a good reason to reduce premiums for insurers is if you're proactive with risk management. But if you don't do that, then the only risk transferring tool, except for increasing the premiums, is to apply an excess to your policy. And an excess also for insurers is a powerful way to still keep you responsible for managing your risk, because if you are responsible for paying a portion of your risk, then you will be more prone to manage your risk. And excesses can be quite sizable these days. I see someone in the comments asked, how is it going to affect, how is the increase in hijacking is going to affect your premiums? It's not only going to affect your premiums in the future. A lot of these compounding risks is having an impact on how insurers are going to structure the excesses on your policy in the future. So for transport and bus operators, excesses can range from a few hundred rands to tens of thousands of rands. And on big ticket items like trucks, buses, LDVs, plant and machinery, the first amount payable when you must claim can leave you in a tight spot. So Richard Branson says, never take your eyes off the cash flow of your business, because it is the lifeblood of your business. So there are several strategies that business owners can follow to ensure that they are properly insured and prepared for big claims. And this includes prevention, risk management, insurance cover, but also having to know exactly what your uninsured portion of your claim is. And so operators who qualify to take out an insurance policy to reduce their excess exposure care about their cash flow, they're managing and mitigating their risks, they're focused on creating sustainability, they're interested in lowering volatility in their business, they care about the financial impact of unforeseen events, they have a great claims track record, and they've not been cancelled by their underlying insurer or had any special penalty terms imposed, and they've not become uninsurable. They're willing to provide us with a copy of the underlying policy and 3 years claims history. And most importantly, they surround themselves with a broker that is competent and capable within their type of industry to provide a proper needs analysis. So there are 7 reasons why transport operators and bus operators need to consider taking out an excess policy if they're conventionally insured. Remember, there's different ways, and Steve has briefly explained that there's alternative ways that you can structure your policy. But typically for operators that are conventionally insured, the reasons why you should consider taking out excess insurance is because your excess will be waived or significantly reduced. There's improved cash flow when you claim. The impact of the claims will become more predictable. You've got peace of mind because you've addressed the risk of an unexpected excess expense. You can consolidate the excesses across multiple policies. So, for instance, you've got a bus policy with Santam and a truck policy with Old Mutual, and you've got a plant policy with Hollard. We can take those excesses and issue one policy for you to cover all your excess exposures. And you've got the option to reduce almost any excess. We can customize those excesses. We're not restricted to certain type of excesses. And you can put that money towards better use in your business. So how does this policy work? And the important thing is to remember that the underlying policy is a filter to your excess policy. So we follow the basis of valuation of the underlying insurer. If your underlying policy is cancelled for any reason or is void or invalid, your excess policy cannot operate. So when you take out an excess policy, the terminology that you need to be aware of, if we reduce your excess, an inner excess will be applicable, and the inner excess calculation is typically calculated on the excess claim that you have with us, less the inner excess, and that will give you the total that becomes payable. So I've just put a few examples together today of your main excesses, but remember I said we're not restricted only to these excesses. We can look at reducing additional excesses as well. So let's look at your basic excess. A simple example would be you've got a truck that's worth R1 million, and your excess with the underlying policy, say, is 10% of your claim. So your excess claim would then be R100,000 if the truck is a total loss, and you'll submit that to someone like us, and we will deduct an inner excess of 10% of claim, and that means that we will pay out R90,000, which means your excess is substantially reduced from R100,000 to R10,000. Another example would be a theft and hijack excess. Often we don't have an inner excess in this case. So say, for instance, you've got a bus that's worth R5 million. The excess that's applied by the underlying insurer is 10%. We will pay out R500,000 with no inner excess. And then let's look at a third-party excess. Third-party excess is tricky because some insurers hold you responsible in terms of their policy wording, whether you are guilty or not. And so if your excess, for instance, is R7,500, there won't be any inner excess. And in the event that you claim from your underlying insurer, we will then pay out 7,500. So these are just to give you a taste of what we can do the type of claims that you can have, and what the maximum amount would be that you would be exposed to, and strike a proper balance between what you can afford to absorb as an uninsured amount. So how can you get started? We say, please get in contact with your insurance broker. The UMA. So today's information is just for information public directly, or the end consumer, because your broker is the one that is licensed and approved to provide you with the right advice in terms of your policy. And yes, you can also find more information on our website. We've got a little disclaimer there for you that you can read afterwards. And then that's a wrap from me. Just a brief reminder to stay excess conscious and actually go take a policy and go highlight every excess that's applicable that you are responsible for. And here's my contact details. You're welcome to connect with us via our website on our contact page, or you can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yolandi. Such important information you're sharing, and lots of wisdom. And almost say having the bigger picture is important in this case. Thank you very much. Please, would you stay with us for the panel discussion just now? I'm quite sure there will be questions. Thank you so much, Yolandi.
Pleasure, Harry.
Ladies and gents, our next presenter then is Mr. Stanley Besselnout. He's the Managing Director of IBF Investigations. He's going to talk about transport risk mitigation in times of protest and unrest. Thank you very much, Stan.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I just want to be sure that everybody can see and hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So what's very important is, firstly, I'd like to say that to an extent, I'm kind of biting my own tongue, because so much has been said that's important that I would have probably wanted to contribute to. And it even leaves me thinking that there's room for another presentation just on the issue of insurance and mitigations, or rather repudiations, etc. But let's get on with the business at hand. Throughout these presentations, we heard a lot of people speaking about things like risk mitigation and risk reduction and risk management and things like that. And while it's very true that these are important things, I think that a trend that I've detected in South Africa, if not the world, is that we often have a situation where the actual insurance service providers, the brokers, and the people that are typically tasked with the duty of reducing risk are qualified for that within the scope of the industry only. When I talk about risk mitigation, I talk about tactical risk mitigation, and that's the physical conduct that goes towards the reduction of risk. And it's true that if you wanted to eliminate all risk, all you had to do was to stop all your vehicles, sell your business, take your cash, and go to the beach. But the reality is that we operate in an environment. So with that said, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to get into my presentation. Myself, Stan Besselnout, I'm a former military intelligence specialist. I've got a background in VIP protection, law enforcement operations, incident and accident investigation, and court testimony, among others. And over the last 22 years, I've spent my time in South Africa working very closely with some of the major corporations, in fact, even some of the sponsors here, on the issue of risk analysis, risk reduction, and tactical risk mitigation. We typically provide training that goes very far beyond what I'm going to cover today. I have limited time. I'd say that today I'm able to share perhaps maybe 1 or 2% of what I think goes into a proper risk mitigation or tactical risk mitigation strategy. That said, let's get into the key here. What I find interesting is I actually updated my presentation just this morning on account of the fact that while the night passed, and as we now all know, anybody based in South Africa will know we have unrest and protest happening right now, specifically in Cape Town and at the Grasmere Toll Plaza. And to that, we actually have a Telegram group that runs currently. We have over 1,800 members. This stemmed out of the unrest that started in KwaZulu-Natal. And from that, it has grown, and we do our best to try and keep people up and aware on the so-called practical intelligence regarding road transport. There are some other issues that we cover as well, but mainly we are focused on trying to create awareness within the transport sector and within people using the roads for the forward intelligence so that they can plan their days, their lives, and their operations. Now, just this morning, we saw a spate of reports coming in of various kinds, and we get this all the time. And what we have is we have these ebbs and flows of information. During certain times, we find that it's fairly quiet and the reports become rather mundane. Things like, there's a claim that somebody is going to protest, or there's been a robbery here or there. And those things are certainly important, but then these trends come up. Right now, my phone has been buzzing all morning, and I've been keeping everybody up to date, even as I'm attending this. But let's get going a little bit here. When we talk about risk mitigations or risk mitigation, tactical risk mitigation in the context of risk reduction, as I approach the problem, the first and most important thing to do is to define what risk actually is. And in this environment, risk in my mind is a situation involving exposure to danger. Now, that danger could be operational, it could be profitability, it could be tactical, it could be social, and it could even be, in terms of corporate image with some of the events we have. When we attend to and address the issue of risk mitigation, I tend to view, analyze, and interpret risk within the confines of what is now commonly known as the so-called Maslow's pyramid of needs. Now, you might be a little bit surprised to see it. We're even venturing in the field of psychology when we talk about physical risks. But the fact is that if we don't properly understand the motivating forces behind some of the crimes we see and some of the risks we see realized, it would be virtually impossible for us to develop or design effective strategies to mitigate those risks. With that said, what I've done is, and just for those who don't follow this or who haven't seen it, Maslow's pyramid of needs is essentially a pyramid of needs that most human beings have, and they will evolve, react at, and motivate themselves to satisfy these needs. Now, for this purpose, the minimum need that everybody has is a so-called physiological need. That's a need for them to be cared for, air, water, food, shelter. They want to feel physically safe. Then comes the so-called safety needs. Now it's personal security. They want income, so they want employment, they want resources, they want health, they want property. That's that. Then comes the need for love and belonging. That's where they develop friendships and associations and family, ties and groups, etc. And when those needs are met, as they develop further, they start developing the need for some kind of esteem. This comes in the form of respect, of self-esteem, of status, of recognition, etc. And then, of course, at the end of all this, ultimately, people want some kind of self-actualization. This is where they have a desire to express themselves into the world, to influence, to positively change, or to impact on people. Now, when we look at these needs, this Maslow's pyramid, and we apply it to the risk or the definition of risk, we'll see that if you turn it up and down, they actually are directly compatible. So the physiological needs are typically expressed in the form of opportunistic crime. People that are at the level where they are battling or struggling to maintain their physiological needs will be very opportunistic. They'll prowl, they'll walk around, they'll look around, they'll see a thing, and they'll exploit the moment. By the time they've developed a little bit further, they become a bit more organized, and we move into the field of safety. And this is where the crime becomes environmental. You might find that in a particular area, in a certain type of settlement, in a certain type of community, there's an increase in crime. That increase in crime is normally environmental. They don't move very far. They don't syndicate very well. They don't coordinate with others. They're kind of individualist, but they are essentially looking after their safety. They're kind of establishing dominance. When we talk at the level of love and belonging, now the crimes or the risks start becoming operational. These people start planning, they start strategizing, they start working within greater areas, they move and they prepare. So they are essentially a little bit more organized. When we come to the level of esteem, this is where the criminal is starting to establish himself as some kind of dominance in his industry, for lack of a better term. They start getting extremely strategic. Now they start planning the days and the times, the equipment they have, the team they choose, where they go, what they do, etc. And then finally, when that risk becomes complex enough, or that need becomes complex enough, they start syndicating. You start seeing people working in larger groups. You start people infiltrating infrastructures and systems and exploiting all kinds of weakness, these cyber attacks, etc. That's at the highest level of risk. So if you can view the risk environment as an inverted pyramid based on Maslow's needs, when you do your tactical risk analysis, you will certainly consider your risks at all these levels. And your operational, let's call it planning, has to evolve around these needs depending on the environment you work out or work in. Now, those risks are divided basically into three elements. There are the physical risks, which are the things that can happen to you or to your assets. Then there are situational risks. These are things that happen to you as a result of where you are, where you end up, what you do, and how you do it. And of course, there might even be institutional risks. Institutional risks are typically, a good example would be somebody who specifically carries, for instance, cash money, or specifically carries foreign passengers, etc. And before you know it, the institutional design exposes you to additional risk based on your operational choices. Now, further to that, your risk can be divided loosely into two categories as well. The first category is the so-called avoidable risks. Those are the things you can do something about. You can tell your drivers to drive better. You can do driver training. You can choose better routes. You can monitor driving, etc., which kind of brings me to a point. I'm a little bit concerned that I see a lot of effort directed towards monitoring and assessment. And I'm aware of it because my clients use these technologies. People are trying very hard to invent some kind of technology or some kind of system that is going to monitor and, in my mind, police the activities of drivers. And they're hoping that through this policing mechanism, and you can say, no, it's not for the driver, it's for the third party. So let's agree to that. It could be the driver, it could be the third party. But we're hoping that through a police strategy, we are going to be able to do some rearward detection. It's a bit like a CCTV camera at your premises that's recording on a device that's standing in a cupboard somewhere. You can certainly see that you have been robbed. You can see who robbed you, and you can see how they robbed you, but it has no effect on the avoidance. So when the avoidable risks are things like gates that you put up, access control, and for transport and operations, we talk about all the management systems that come with it, even maintenance, because failures in maintenance is a financial risk, and it's a profitability risk because it costs you more to maintain a vehicle that's poorly maintained to start with. So those are the things that fall under avoidable risks. And of course, then there are the so-called unpredictable risks. These are the things that you cannot plan. You cannot say next year on the 15th of March, the 27th of June, and the 18th of August, there's going to be protest action, unrest, or flare-up of problems, and we are going to simply pause operations for that period. Your unpredictable risks typically come in the forms of crime, violence, and protest, because these are inward bound. We talk about outward-facing risk, we talk about inward-facing risk, and we do a proper tactical risk analysis. We divide it into these categories as well. And it's kind of important to do that. Now, of course, there might be a question of, yes, Stan, but how do we do it? Unfortunately, that can be a complex process. Sometimes when we do a tactical risk analysis for clients, it includes firstly a so-called technical fleet audit. This is where we look at the technical or the physical fleet at different depots or locations, and we detect the so-called maintenance trends in that environment. We give them a report saying, look, at your George depot, we have a problem with whoever is maintaining brakes. In your Durban depot, we have a problem with whoever is doing licensing and registration. In your Cape Town depot, we have a problem with whoever is maintaining your tires. Those risks gravitate in the environment due to internal poor maintenance cultures. And as far as the technical fleet audit is concerned, it empowers the client to address certain elements in that environment and also to be alert for those repetitions in others. The other thing we do is the so-called route risk assessments. Now, a typical route risk assessment in the South African context is a paper document that tells the driver where to drive and what to watch out for. The problem with that kind of route risk assessment is that in most areas, there are big signs that are up that say, caution potholes, engage lower gear, etc. So when I do a route risk report or route risk assessment, I do a so-called videographic route risk assessment, which means I actually film the physical route, and I actually detect all the risks that fall into the various categories. I categorize them, I specify them, and I produce a so-called route risk video. And when a driver watches the video and visually sees the environment and the risks that I identify, it forms a so-called better memory foundation. So when he operates in those areas, he can physically see them. In addition, we do the actual tactical risk assessments on premises, which is where we go to the facility, whether it's a depot, a distribution warehouse, whatever it is, and we look at the physical risk. Now, I don't provide any security services, so I won't supply alarms, I don't do cameras or nothing. I'm a tactical specialist. I tell you what your risks are. And from that point, you should engage with the security company. And in some cases, some of my clients have engaged me to, for lack of a better term, facilitate a change in protocols on the part of the security service provider. So that just gives you an overview of what the foundation is for what I'm sharing with you today. Now, when it comes to the issue of managing risks and trying to manage risks, I have, I suppose, a unique approach. And coincidentally, I've done tactical risk assessments on international hotels in the US, alongside former and current US Secret Service. And I assure you that the level of risk assessment in the US context or the global context, from an international threat perspective, and the tactical risk assessment from a local political, such as my time in the military and what we have in the transport environment, is certainly not the same, but the same forces are at play. So we want to keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to your risk management, it's kind of important for you to first of all, again, we're back at the Maslow's pyramid. The first thing you need to do is to accept that you face risks. It's a little bit like an Alcoholics Anonymous thing. If you don't admit that you're an alcoholic, you're going to have a problem following any kind of protocols. I find a lot of people seeking tactical or physical risk mitigation advice from financial risk specialists. I don't discount the value of a financial risk assessment. I'm talking about a tactical, physical, operational risk assessment. When you have accepted that you face risks, you've got to anticipate the risks that you face. Therefore, you've got to classify them, you've got to categorize them, you've got to decide which are outbound and inbound risks, you've got to build yourself a risk matrix, you've got to look at where your vulnerabilities are, and you've got to look at the strategies that you need to deploy. The next thing you need to do is to plan a response to those risks, especially the unpredictable ones. I find so many clients that are involved in, say, a major crash incident, or right now I've done an investigation where a bus caught a light and was set alight, or whatever the case might be. And then the client contacts me and says, look, we need you to deploy now and to do the investigation. I go, okay, well, what have you got? And they end up having nothing. They've never dealt with somebody like me. They don't have, the right kinds of information. And they certainly had no internal response strategy in place. They basically just fell through it and hope to come out the other side as effectively as they can. The next thing you have to do is to actually respond and react to those realized risks. Now, to me, a realized risk is any risk that becomes real, that happens. And then there's no point responding and stopping it, or watching your bus burn, your truck burn, or realizing that there was a crash. You've now got to try to understand and analyze those risks. You've got to do some kind of interrogation into that environment and into that situation to understand. Yes, some clients love the terms root cause analysis. Sometimes the root cause analysis might be one thing, but the cause is a completely different thing when it becomes technical and complicated. And of course, then comes the most important part, the so-called risk exploitation. Now, risk exploitation is where a situation developed, something happened, a risk was detected, it became realized against you, and you are now suffering the risk. Now you need to take the intelligence, the information, and the let's call it the reverse intelligence out of what happened there, and actually develop a strategy coming out of that for reduction of that risk. Now, we often find that in operations, you might have, especially large operations, you might have a crash in Durban, or you might have protest action in KwaZulu-Natal, and an incident happens. And they tend to isolate that event, and they tend to consider the risk in isolation, but they change nothing in their operational activities in, say, Cape Town. And then they kind of wait for it to happen in Cape Town, and then they try to respond to that. So from a risk tactical perspective, when you come to me for risk advice or risk analysis, I do a global risk analysis, and I motivate the introduction of global strategies rather than, let's call it microscopic strategies, which I often see Now, when we talk about risk aversion or the treatment of risk, we divide the risk environment into so-called concentric circles with your self-actualization at the center of it, and of course your physical needs at the end. So in our analysis of your risk, we typically start at determining who is at risk. So in a typical environment, it might only be you. If it's only you and it's operational, a good example again is somebody who transports cash. These days, if you transport cell phones, it might only be you. Then it's possible that it might be some parties. So if you're in an environment where, say, you transport general goods, there are many people that have general goods, but it might be unique goods such as cell phones again. Then you could have many parties affected by the risk. This is where you transport things that are much more commonly appealing in the general public. Now we talk about food stuff, we talk about alcohol, stuff like that. And then we have risks that affect most parties. That's almost everybody. So anybody with a truck, anybody with a bus. And then, of course, there are risks that affect everyone. That's any road user or any operational organization. And by dividing and categorizing your risk from the outside, from the inside outward, and developing a protection protocol from the outside inward, you are not only better positioned to detect the possible realization of risk, you're also immediately more poised to react to that risk and to respond to it. When it comes to the physical risk analysis, it's very important that your analysis is done also along these concentric circles. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at your operations, at the way in which you operate, where you go, how you do it. The next thing you look at is the assets you use in that environment. Are they appealing? Are they unique? Are they attractive? Are they easily identified? A good example would be a very brightly colored and well-signaged vehicle. As easy as they are to recover when they are hijacked, just as easy they are to identify, therefore to know what kind of product they typically carry. Then we look at geography, or more importantly, what areas you're traveling. Now, it could be global geography, it could be regional geography, it could be national geography, or it could be internal. For instance, it is a known fact that for some roads, like the R300 in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, is very well known for protest action. The N2 through Durban, for Pietermaritzburg, Pinetown, that area is very well known for. The N1 past Grasmere, again, is well known for that. And then we look at trends. We know that there are certain times of the year when there are demands, for instance, for pay increases, etc., and that often spills over into so-called protest action. And then finally, we look at actual information and intelligence. This is the kind of stuff we're hoping to run with this Telegram channel of ours. The idea is to give people information. Our intelligence is at the first level, it's inactionable information. It's merely white noise. It's a lot of info. It's a volume of information. In order for the intelligence to become viable, we need to decide that that intelligence applies to or affects our own risk mitigation desires and goals. For that actionable intelligence to become applicable, you need to decide whether it affects your operation in the environment in which you operate. And then finally, for the intelligence to be responded to, it needs to be verified. So through that process, you follow a risk mitigation strategy. And this is something that we help a lot of clients with developing internally, because most people that are in fleet operations are not tactical people, are not former police, anything. They're not military, whatever. They know truck operations. They know how to get product to the client at a reasonable cost with minimum maintenance in terms of unscheduled maintenance. So that's their scope of skill and knowledge. Now we expect of those people, perhaps as an insurer, to do something to reduce their risk. And we say to them, well, if you choose the right risk product, the right insurance product, and you massage your excesses and you put in all these systems to monitor you, those things are certainly important, and I'm not discounting them. But when it comes to think on a personal level about the personal safety of the individual driver inside that vehicle. That man has a family, there's a life at stake. When we talk about risk at that level, to me, it's no longer a financial exercise. So even some of our work involves the training of truck drivers and fleet drivers with the risk mitigation strategies they can employ even during a hijacking event. But that's a discussion for a different day. In order for you to mitigate your risk effectively, you have to first consider your risk. Considering it without expecting it is, of course, irresponsible. Then you have to anticipate it. You actually have to sit and realize that this risk is going. People are funny. It's human nature to love the route of least resistance and to operate within an environment of comfort. While nothing is happening, I feel like nothing can happen. This is why people do irresponsible things, drive too fast, drive under the influence of alcohol. I've heard the story many times. Sure, I don't even know how I got home Friday night. I was so drunk, and then they're proud of it. Then you've got to actually anticipate and react to that risk. You've got to decide what am I going to do when the risk is realized, and then the final part, which is still sorely lacking in South Africa, is knowing how to exploit that risk. It has happened. What do I learn from it? What do I take away from it? Now, when we talk about risk proximity or the realization of risk, we move through the following concentric circles. First of all, there are probable risks on a scale of probability. It's probably going to happen. It's probably going to happen. It's invariable. I had somebody say to me this morning again that they were very disturbed by the happenings in KwaZulu-Natal. It's in their area, and it was quite upsetting, and it's inevitable that it's going to happen again. So they've surrendered to it. Then you've got to realize that not only is it probable, but it also becomes possible. And in order for you to know that it's possible or not possible, you have to consider your environment, your own transport environment. Then we get to the stage where you say, okay, this risk is becoming likely. By the time a risk becomes likely, your strategies, your protocols, your preparations, your reactions, your response teams, your service providers, all that needs to be in place. By the time the risk becomes imminent, it's essentially too late. Now your team should be on standby already. They should be poised to respond. They should be poised to react. You must have your service providers on standby for the purpose of protection or recovery or repair or whatever. And then finally, the risk will become active. And active risk is something that has been realized already. And the deployment, reaction, and exploitation strategies that exist around an active risk is unique in and of itself. Now, when you are actually going through this risk reaction, the first thing that happens, again, along these concentric circles, is the so-called detection. There must be an effective detection protocol. I know of many cases where my clients' vehicles, in fact, I'll tell you an actual story. Somebody had their vehicle stolen in Port Elizabeth from a repair shop during the night. No one had any ideas the vehicles were being taken. The vehicle had tracking systems on it. No one knew that they were moving out of the area. There was no geofencing in place. There was no release protocol in place. The vehicles were not detected until one driver, two vehicles, my clients and another person's, was stolen. A Shah police officer noticed a truck driver bumping a curb at the Zimbabwe border. He approached him, checked his paperwork, found that he wasn't happy with what the driver was saying, detained both the drivers, and then went on a campaign, contacted my client, and they found out that the truck was removed only when it was at the border. That's from Port Elizabeth to the Zimbabwe border, despite tracking. Now, they could have jammed it. A lot of things could have happened, but it just shows you that your detection is extremely important. Then, of course, the protocols. You cannot detect the realization of a risk and decide in the moment what you think you must do if you're not qualified for it, because you're probably going to make some bad decisions. And one of the risks you have is that you end up investing too much resources in deploying a reaction strategy when, in fact, those resources are not necessary. You have to have your services in place, your partnerships, your service providers, your reaction teams, whether it's security, whether it's recovery, whether it's spill control, whether it's investigation of the crash and analysis of the crash, whether it's the so-called evidence retention, it doesn't matter. And then you've got to consider legislation, because there are certain things you can do and certain things you are simply not allowed to do. I've got a lot of clients who have serious crashes where people pass away, where they get to those scenes where they are not allowed to take any photographs by law enforcement officials. Now, it's true that the law enforcement officials have that capacity, but the way in which you present your presence, your duties, your functions, and your contribution at the scene can have a positive outcome on that. And of course, lastly, we talk about the issue of the physical action. Now, that physical action in and of itself is a total risk mitigation strategy and something that's developed on a per case basis. So just for the record, there's no cookie cutter diagram or cookie cutter recipe for risk mitigation, because you need to consider each person's risk differently. A good example would be women and men face completely different risks. Children and adults face completely different risks. Somebody staying in an informal settlement and somebody staying in an upmarket, well-developed environment or community have completely different risk profiles. So for that purpose, a tactical risk analysis is a very goal-specific thing that's done in partnership with a very specific client under those conditions. Now, true, you might have 5 clients all transporting on the same contract in the same direction for the same product, and they can certainly combine their efforts and assign a single risk mitigation analysis. So that's actually possible. Now, when it comes to risk mitigation, the typical things that we would do are things like route and operational assessments, profiling and classification of the risk, the detection and anticipation process, or what must you do, how must you do it, how do you become aware, how quickly should you be aware, what mechanisms can you have in place. Then, more importantly, the actual reaction and response. What do you do? Who do you send? Who do you contact? What happens when you get there? What should you have? What information is important, and how do you package that information? And then finally, we talk about the so-called analysis and exploitation. Now, in that context, we talk about the way in which you take away information or intelligence from that event. You've already suffered a loss. Whether you're insured or not is a discussion for other people, but it's a loss, whether it's operational, whether it's reputational, whether it's financial, it doesn't matter. Your loss has been suffered the minute you lose productivity. And it's your task at this stage to try and get the maximum benefit out of that. Without going too deep, because there's so much to say about this. I mean, some of our training lasts 2 months. We typically do online training with clients on these issues, and it's 2 days a week for 2 months in a row, or we do 1 week training, etc. But within the amount of time that I was allotted, I think it's about as much as I can share to give you a taste of what goes into a physical, tactical risk analysis and the development of a reaction strategy. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Stanley. This was seriously interesting. I really appreciate your time and sharing this knowledge with us. And we're quite sure there might be some questions in the panel discussion. Hopefully you're still available then. Thank you very much, Stanley. Right, ladies, last but not least, next presenter is Mr. John Russell. He's the Managing Director of Fogmaker South Africa. He's going to talk about the benefits of fire suppression systems installed in high-value trucks and buses, and how it can mitigate fire losses in times of unrest and disorder. Thank you very much, John.
I want to say good morning, at least for good morning all. And firstly, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Harry, with regards to the opportunity to participate in this event. As such, just listening to the previous presentations, what comes through is a sobering sort of realization of the challenges that's been presented to the industry during this time. And I really hope what I'm about to present actually adds some value to the discussion at hand. Just by way of introduction, firstly, can everybody hear me clearly? You can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Just by way of introduction, as Harry said, I'm John Russell. I'm the Managing Director of Fogmaker South Africa. We are the Southern African leg of Fogmaker International, a Swedish company that produces fire suppression systems for the global market. And we basically live, eat, sleep fire suppression and fire mitigation for mobile machines and vehicles. And I'm sure a number of participants would be saying and listening to that and hearing fire suppression. And some of them might be thinking with regards to, oh, I've never needed that and that don't require it. Or questioning the sort of, does this actually work? And for those fleet owners who might have experienced a fire loss in some cases or have identified fire as a risk in their risk mitigation strategy, might be also saying with regards to, we can't afford this. And the objective of my sort of presentation around this is, one, just to present some global sort of statistics and trends around fire suppression and fires in vehicles, and to hopefully get people thinking with regards to and changing their minds around the use and identification of fire suppression within their fire risk mitigation strategies and the affordability thereof. Just if you had to try to quantify the sort of the extent of, I'm also struggling with regards to getting my screen to move on. So bear with me here, there we go. If your question with regards to the extent of the concern and of fire within the South African context, the simple Google search for bus fires in South Africa or truck fires in South Africa, you'd get inundated with a number of quite scary pictures with regards to incidents that have recently happened around this. And the point that I want to sort of raise in just presenting these is around typically a fire on a mobile machine, regardless how it started, is in most cases a catastrophic event and often leads to total loss of that asset. Just if one tried to dig up some fire statistics in South Africa, unfortunately, we're not aware of any reliable consolidated information around the number of fires and the source and ignition points of these. And typically, we then would refer to international statistics to try to quantify the quantum of the risk. And I just bring up a fairly busy slide here. This is a table that was presented at a previous Fire on Vehicles, the FIRE conference. And it was a source from the National Fire Protection Association in the United States around the numbers of fires and the value of that. So I just want to sort of draw your attention to two areas around that. One is around the fact that firstly there was in the period under review, and these are basically fires reported by all the fire departments that attended fires in the United States over this period, that there were over 200,000 vehicle fires. Quite a staggering amount, and of those, just over 2,000 were related to buses and school buses. The value of damage to property during of that was $29 million, about R500 million. And looking at photo-read vehicles, around 20,000 fire incidents. The total value of that is totally, if you had to sum that up, is quite close to about 4.5 billion rand. Which I suppose in what context of what Steyn presented earlier around the previous riots, is such as a small amount, but still something to be of concern around. Statistics around the source of fires in mobile equipment and vehicles, again, very little available in South Africa. And looking at international sort of statistics, they mainly sort of center around electrical sources, engine sources, and tires and brakes. And if you had to, I'm sure if you had to expand that into a South African context, the picture would look slightly different and distorted in the fact that we more likely have a larger proportion as a result of protest and unrest. Just want to go back a few years around some of the interesting sort of investigations done that came out initially out of Sweden. And Sweden would be one of the leading countries, mainly because of the institutions there around fire risk mitigation and systems as such. And they picked up a trend that started sort of around about 1999 and 200, where all of a sudden there was a step change in the number of bus and coach fires in Sweden. And after a fair bit of investigation and reporting into this, one of the conclusions they drew was that a move away from let's say environmentally unfriendly engines to more environmentally friendly engines that's been driven by legislation from the Euro 2s to Euro 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s as such, that this was a large driver of these number of or this increase in fires, mainly due to the fact that in order to meet the legislation requirements around this, these machines and engines had to operate at higher temperatures, higher pressures, to allow for the catalytic converters to work and to get the efficiencies up, to meet the soundproofing and noise pollution requirements. There's a lot more encapsulation of the engine compartment, a lot more flammable materials being used in that process, and of course a lot more electronics as such. So just the point sort of came out that it's actually the newer vehicles, the vehicles that are sort of more efficient, that seem to be at higher risk of fire. And this is something just to be aware of. I'm sure in many cases A lot of our operators and fleet owners are still driving Euro 2, Euro 3, Euro 4s maybe at the most. But as we move into this era around introducing high Euro engines, as such that these engines are at a higher risk of fire. What Sweden did at that time, in about 2004, they introduced legislation that forced every single new bus to be fitted with a fire suppression system. And something quite interesting happened at that point, in that the average cost of insurance claims from fires sort of reduced quite dramatically, sort of by a factor of 3, from over R1 million on average to a region around 300,000 in rand terms over that period. And that got sort of a lot of the legislators attention as such, to point that Europe over the last couple of years have introduced legislation relating to Regulation 107, which is driving fire safety in buses and coaches and vehicles within the participating countries in Europe. And this legislation basically requires every new bus to be designed and have installed a automatic fire suppression detection and automatic fire suppression system. The deadlines for Class 3 buses, which are basically coaches, was back in 2019. And then as of September last year, all Class 1 and Class 2, which is city buses and standing buses, would have to meet these requirements. Just some points around what the trends I'm trying to sort of highlight around that is just around the fact that these high efficient vehicles appear to be at higher risk, at the risk of fire. That the introduction of fire suppression systems into these vehicles reduce the cost of insurance claims, and that there seems to be a global drive, both by legislation and lobby groups, of enforcing fire suppression into the industry. When I say lobby groups, there was a case back in New South Wales about 2 years ago, after a number of large profile bus fires in around Sydney, that the unions basically forced the local government to install fire suppression on every single bus. And they retrofitted, I think it was over 4,000 buses with fire suppression. Just who we are, Fogmaker, and this is my few slides with regards to marketing, and it's just why I do this, is just to lead into what I want to say a bit further as such. As I say, we focus on fire suppression on mobile machines as such. We use a high pressure water mist technology. It's a patented technology, first introduced in Formula 1 racing cars back in 1995, but since then we've installed over 200,000 systems globally. Bus by far must be Fogmaker's globally highest industry, but we operate in the truck, the aircraft, forestry industry, ports and harbors, and here in South Africa, mining industry must make up our biggest market segment. I just want a quick word around certification. Any fire suppression worth its salt would have gone through extensive testing globally. I'm not aware of any other fire suppression system that has more certificates and certification than Fogmaker. And this one in particular, R107, as such, this relates to the regulation I've just talked about. Fogmaker was the first fire suppression system to actually achieve that. As such. So having done a little bit of market bantering there, you might just ask with regards to where does this come to with regards to the South African context with regards to riots and protests. These three vehicles, the riot vehicles for our police and police forces, such as we've been involved over the last couple of years and have the contract for installing fire suppression to protect these vehicles. And every new vehicle that has been installed over the last, or sort of rolled off the production line over the last couple of years, has got a fire suppression system in place. And the left-hand side, the Cutter military vehicle there, such produced both here in South Africa and in UAE. Likewise, here we're protecting the wheel arch protection, as well as cabin crew and the passenger crew of these vehicles. And just to share with you an incident relating to the vehicle in the bottom right corner there, such back in the protests in Wynberg in 2019, the xenophobic protests, such this vehicle happened to be surrounded and in that protest and petrol bombed. The fire suppression system, the tires caught alight, the fire suppression system sort of was triggered and fire was successfully suppressed, and the vehicle drove out, and the brigadier on board at that time, the commander, sort of said basically he thought him and his 7 other crew members had to exit this vehicle into this mob, and they thought their day was actually sort of coming to an end. So sort of success story around that. On the trucking side, such again another example was a vehicle. This again we protecting the engine of this vehicle, as well as the tires from a concern around brakes. And globally, Maxim, this is a mobile explosive mixing unit as such, after an incident in Europe where the brakes sort of seized on this vehicle, caught alight, and this whole unit exploded and took out the whole highway that it was sort of parked on. Globally, they're now installing fire suppression to cover brakes and engine compartment on these vehicles. We frequently sort of get challenged with regards to the affordability of this, and I mean, obviously we've had this discussion around the industry we're talking about under huge cost pressures at the moment. As such, in most cases, we're having to do a fleet rollout as such around this, and just for the industry just to be aware of what's been coming to market of late is rent-to-own solutions, where you are retrofitting a large fleet as such. And here we're talking about introducing going into a 2 or 3 year contract where the customer pays off his investment in a fire suppression over the contract period, or services and inspections are included in that. And at the end of the contract, the customer then takes full ownership of the fire suppression system. And this is typically targeted at where fleets are having to retrofit a large number of units. And another thing in the market is a term rental solution. And this is targeted at where operators or fleet managers are having to have taken on a project where they are operating in an environment where fire suppression is a requirement of that contract, typically in a mining situation where you're busing passengers onto and off a mine as such. And here you're basically renting the fire suppression solution for that period. At the end of the period, either the contract would either be renewed and continued, or the fire suppression system is removed. And it's a very cost-effective option in the case where you know your vehicles are not going to be on that contract forever and might be moved on to a contract where fire suppression isn't required. Just some parting comments, so it's not a very long presentation around that. Just again, just illustrate the point that it's the more modern and efficient engines that are at higher risk around fire. Globally, there have been many situations and records where the introduction of fire suppression has reduced the average cost of insurance claims. Fire suppression typically has been focused on engine compartment, but this has now been extended to wheel arch and to the operator cabin. Operator cabin for larger sort of vehicles like buses are a very expensive solution, I must admit, and that there are pricing solutions in the market to be considered where a large fleet is required for retrofitting, but would make this manageable. And I'll conclude there. Just if any questions, I suppose I'll answer those as part of the main question answer solution. And just if from a contact perspective, please go to fogmaker.co.za website. All our branches and contact numbers are listed on that. And you'll find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Harry, thank you much. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, John. Yeah, definitely crucial technology you're telling us here about. And I'm quite sure there will be questions, and I would love to see something like this in action. That's going to be very impressive, I'm quite sure. Ladies and gents, yes, so let's do questions and answers. Could we please have Yolandi, Stanley, and John at least unmute themselves, switch on the camera. Steve, I don't know if you also want to join in. And the audience, guys, you are welcome to unmute yourself, and then we can recognize you and you can ask your question. So just getting our panelists in here. Right, so there's our panelists. Ladies and gents, you're welcome to raise your hand or to unmute, and I will recognize you, and you can ask a question. John, just curiosity from my side, the fire protection system, how is it activated? Is it based on heat, or how does it work?
So I'll talk generically. As such, typically the systems that are required or available at the moment are all automatic, both activated automatically as well as manually. So you'd do a fire risk assessment, you identify where to lay out your detection line, and these would be either electronically or pneumatically tubes that would then trigger the system, and that will be laid out in the engine compartment where you'd identify the high risk areas. Manual punches in a mining environment are sort of a prerequisite. These will be placed both inside the operator cabin as well as on the egress routes, sort of the staircases, and that these can be triggered from an external party.
Thank you, John. Sorry, yes, a person, Phillips, I'm not too sure how to pronounce that name. Is it Types or Types? Phillips. All right, so this person is asking already this morning, how will premiums be affected with the rise in truck hijacking? I see Yolandi disappeared. I don't know what happened there. Maybe she's got a signal problem.
No, maybe she disconnected for a second.
Yeah, she will. I'm quite sure she will be back in a moment. All right, so maybe she will be the one that will answer that question. Let's take in the second question here. Fog maker system, can this be installed on trailers, or is it more for the horse of the vehicle?
To answer that question, yes, it can be. So you'd typically install two systems around that. In the sense, obviously, your horse and trailer would be actually decoupled at times, and you'd have a system sort of installed on the actual horse or trailer, and a separate system installed on your horse.
Thank you, John.
Then I'll straight jump into the next question. There, the question is a fire suppression system only to manage fires in the engine bay? And traditionally, that's where fire suppression sort of originated from. But most manufacturers now would be able to extend that to to protect your brakes and your wheel, let's call it wheel arch, for the threat of fires there. In particular, to cover two risks. One is from the overheating and seizing of brakes that might trigger a tire fire, as well as from a Molotov bombs, which might typically target that at the wheels. If they can get the wheels to go on a truck or bus, typically that would lead to a total fire loss.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm just hoping to get Yolandi back.
Is there not one of the other possible guys who can answer that question around the premiums?
So the question was, how will the premiums be affected with the rise in truck hijacking? Is there anybody that can answer that one?
So I'm going to give an answer not as an insurer or as somebody working in the insurance industry, but rather as somebody who investigates these, and more importantly, I have a lot to do with insurance claim repudiations. So firstly, I think we need to keep in mind that insurance premiums are invariably affected by the total risk package. So whenever there's a trend that's upward in any loss environment, you have either a change in policy or a change in the risk description, or you have an increase in premiums that is commensurate with a change in that risk. But you must keep in mind that while we have an increase in hijackings at the moment, we had a huge decrease in heavy transport crime last year. So I'm hoping that the insurers will balance the risk of less claims during the COVID period against the loss of more claims during this particular period. But I think this is why it's so important to also choose the insurer properly. If you choose the wrong insurer, you'll find a much more rapid response to the risk climate, whereas other insurances are forward protected and they might respond more slowly. And it's, to me, very important that an insurance service provider or perhaps a broker share with their clients various platforms, mechanisms, methods, partners, etc., that can help them with risk mitigation. Because if you can mitigate your risk and your broker or your insurer can share that information with everybody, you should be in a better position. That's about as far as I can take it, I think.
Thank you, Stanley. I see Derek Park's hand is up. Derek, you're welcome to unmute.
Yeah, perhaps I can just come in from a broker's perspective. I work with Steve. I'm a manager as well at India Risk Services. So in the absence of them being available through whatever reason to respond, perhaps I can give some insight as well. I think people need to remember that as well, that as much as an insurer manages their book of business, which is the entire pool of premium, let's take as an example. Now, let's look at the statutory scenario that was referred to earlier by Stein. You know, the premiums have skyrocketed as a result of bus burnings, truck burnings, etc. So the pool has been affected collectively as a result of random burnings and increase in riot within South Africa on that specific industry. So therein lies an example of where no matter how well you try and manage your risk as an individual, unfortunately, the application of an increased premium in that scenario was just sweeping across everybody. When it comes down away from down to your personal risk with insurer, a similar thing applies. Their entire book starts going pear-shaped and they start really losing money hand over foot because of increased hijacking. Application of mind to and if your loss ratio, if your claims are well.
Derek, now I'm sorry we're losing you there. That's also a signal problem there. We can't really. Derek, sorry we're losing you. We can't really hear what you're saying the last half of your talk. Maybe if you can perhaps type a short sentence in the chat room, please. Maybe answer there because we've got a problem hearing you.
Benchmark of profitability. You're going to not be burnt when it comes to increase of premiums. Increase, no, brokers couldn't negotiate.
It seems to me Derek can't hear us either. Right, Yolandi, he's trying to answer the question in terms of, let me just get here. How will premiums be affected with the rise in truck hijacking?
Yeah, sorry, I'm back here. Sorry, I just lost connectivity a bit there.
Yeah, Derek, we were trying to tell you that we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, my signal's strong again. Look, you know, Sasria was, I don't know where I left off. But Sasria was an example where an insurer, being Sasria, imposed a sweeping increase across the entire industry, irrespective of how you manage your risk as an individual company. So there is something where you can't do much about it, other than the industry, as Stein mentioned, who is going to speak to them to say, how can we do this differently? So that's an exception. However, when it comes to the insurer direct, there are very specific things, and I think the panel today have put forward ways of being able to manage risk a lot better. The insurer, if their entire book, because of increased hijackings in this question, has affected their book negatively, there could be increases across the entire book, yes, because they need to manage the entire pool of premium. However, having said that, as an individual client, if you do manage your risk a heck of a lot better than your competitor or any other fleet manager, you're going to not be burnt. You're not going to be affected as much in terms of any increases. So it is critical that the things spoken of today and any kind of risk management that you're able to exercise within your business be done accurately, correctly, and with absolute precision. Because I can give examples of clients from our business where same fleet sizes, similar products that are carried. However, the number of incidents and claims between two companies are vastly different when it comes down to risk management. So, and I promise you that when renewal comes up each year, it is a much easier discussion having with the guy who manages better, has less incidents, even though generally there are higher hijacking incidents around the country. It's much more comfortable speaking with him than the one who is hit harder with premium increases because their loss ratio is a little bit pear-shaped and their risk management is not in place as much as the other. So it comes down on the insurer side to managing your risk. From a Sasria perspective, there's not much you can do other than our industry going and fighting it.
Thank you, Derek. Very informative. Yolande, I don't know if you want to add something there.
Due to my signal, I've missed quite a lot. But yes, definitely working close with your broker and making sure that your broker is a specialist in the industry that you're operating in is very crucial at this moment. And looking at your insurance with a risk management hat on, and realizing that your insurance is not the ultimate solution as a risk transfer tool. There's many other tools available, and every one of those little components should be viewed holistically, and that's why it's best to get experts into your business to have an eagle's eye to see exactly what you're exposed to.
Thank you, Yolande. All right, ladies and gents, opportunity for more questions to our panelists. I see there's another one. Will the fog maker system be able to be used as an alternative to Hashchem vehicle having to have a fixed number of extinguishers? Fixed number of extinguishers.
Just, I would think that it's not an alternative, it's more in conjunction with as such. Typically, these incidences, as Stan pointed out, are very difficult to predict where this is going to be, and typically away from a lot of Hashchems and response vehicles as such. The time from a initiation of a vehicle fire to total asset loss is very quick. And the idea of the fire suppression system internal is to try firstly eliminate the spread of the fire, stop it, and if not stop it, then give an opportunity for the passengers and driver to evacuate and safely around that. So no, I wouldn't say it's an alternative to that. It's in addition to it. And then whilst there's just a question above that is a question with regards to what type of material is used in extinguishing the fire. In the cases, I'm talking general terms around this. Traditionally, powder systems have been the sort of at the forefront of fire suppression for many years. It's now moved away from fire to liquid fire suppression and water mist in particular. And there's typically a foaming agent inside the system to basically cover all organic material to eliminate that element of the fire triangle, and that we used in both the wheel arch and the engine compartment. I seem to have been lost there. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. And but in the case of protecting the operator cabin, as such, we typically use then deionized water that is harmless and non-corrosive for electronics and the likes.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gents, it seems to me everybody is happy, comfortable, and the question is more about the requirements of the hazardous goods transporter have to have vehicles fitted with the extinguisher to be compliant. What I was asking if this would or could be used as an alternative. Yeah. Because,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, from the Transport Forum side, I would really like to thank all our sponsors and our proud hosts for today for making the Transport Forum possible. We really appreciate your investment into the Transport Forum, and we really appreciate all your mentorship and guidance to myself and making this platform possible. What I would like now is for our panelists to do some closing remarks, and maybe we can start at John, and then we can go to Stan, and then Yolandi, if you can kindly close the session for us as host. Thank you very much. So John, some closing remarks from your side.
Cheers, Harry. Thank you. I think the word with regards to holistic risk mitigation strategies and approaches is very valid, and I'd like to believe that fire suppression should form part of that. So a proper fire risk assessment done by a professional company should be part of that, and where necessary, then fire suppression should be part of the package. As I would have presented earlier, there's definitely this works, and it definitely is a reduction in the total cost of insurance claims as a result of fitting this type of technology. And just thank you for everyone for participating. Again, just my email address, john@fogmaker.co.za, or you can just visit our website. Harry, thank you very much for organizing us. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, John. Much appreciated. Stan.
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I'm quite happy to see that so many people are interested in their risk and safety. And then also I'd like to mention that I'm more than happy to contribute again in future, because this topic of tactical risk mitigation and analysis can get a little bit complex sometimes. So it probably be better to break it up into little pieces. But I suppose my parting comment would be that people, be they within the insurance industry, within the broker group, or within the actual transporters carrying, let's call it the primary risk, I think it's important for people to realize that risk mitigation is not only a financial exercise. There are also very specific physical exercises that are involved with that. I leave everybody. I thank you all. I wish you all the best. And I really hope that we live a risk-free life, if that's even possible.
Thank you, Stan. Yes, indeed. Yolandi, would you kindly close the session for us as host?
Awesome.
Kindly unmute.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. A holistic approach in the future is so important. Prevention, any measure that you can take as a prevention is going to be important. So get onto those communication groups to know what's going on in your surroundings. And consider in high value assets to put risk management tools into your high value assets. Something like a fire suppression, and we've seen those stats from Sweden. That's so inspiring. Thank you, John. I think that can make a massive difference going forward, especially in the situation that we're finding ourselves in South Africa with vehicles burning out for various reasons. And then I just want to leave you with the thought to be excess conscious and go back to your insurance policies and go check those excesses out. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much, Yolandi. Thank you, all the panelists, and take care. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.